Greetings. The following is a true story, and only the names of the humans have been changed to protect the guilty. It comes from a book called The Third Prophecy of Hybobolus Clune. In case you don't know, Hybobolus was a 12th century Belgian monk who was able to vibrate at the same frequency as the interdimensional beings, and that meant he gained access to some valuable insights into the nature of reality. Among them was what was to become known as the cosmic prophecy, the knowledge that humanity would be attacked from outer space at the end of the 20th century. Now, before we begin, there are three things you will need to know about superluminal hyperdrive engines. 1. They instantly transport a spacecraft to any point in the solar system. 2. They are absolutely deadly at causing trouble. 3. To date, only one has ever been built. Chapter 1. The story begins in the summer of 1996 with two people in a room in Sligo, watching television. And the President of the United States of America was speaking. Good morning. In less than an hour, aircraft from here will join others from around the world, and we will be launching the largest aerial battle in the history of mankind. Tears made their way down Martina's face as she listened. Herself and Pa were sitting quietly on a sofa. It was dark, and the only other light came from outside the living room door, which was open. Perhaps it is fate that today is the 4th of July, and that once again we are fighting for our freedom, not from tyranny, oppression, or persecution, but from annihilation. Pa gripped Martina's hand. Watching the images of destruction from around the globe had made them feel small, helpless. The President spoke again. We're fighting for our right to live, to exist. And should we win the day, the 4th of July will be known as the day that humanity declared in one voice, we will not go quietly into the night. A text banner scrolled its way across the bottom of the screen. Islamabad, 486,000. Beijing, 887,000. Sao Paulo, 560,000. The journalists in the newsroom had thought it helpful to broadcast the estimated casualties. Pa stood up to turn off the television. I can't look anymore. There's nothing we can do. So, you seen it too? Came a voice from the door. It was Kevin, down from upstairs. He was pale and trembling, his eyes as wide as saucers. The others did not reply. There was nothing to say. Kevin sat down on the edge of a chair close to the door and put his head in his hands. Pa walked over to a corner of the room. Martina wiped the tears from her face. We need to warn the others. They're still up in the woods. They won't know anything about this. We've got to. Her voice trailed off when she noticed Pa rooting through a pile of dirty bags. He produced a tobacco tin and sat back down. A strong smell filled the room as he opened the box. What? That's White Widow. Kevin lifted his head. Where'd you get that, Pa? Well, I got it ages ago. I'd been keeping it for a special occasion. Like what? Armageddon? Kevin's head fell back into his hands. Pa sat down and began sticking cigarette papers together. Will you turn on the light, Martina? Jesus, no lights. Kevin leapt up and paced over to the window, peering carefully beyond the curtains. We don't want to make things easy for their scouts. How many get-a-fixes did you have, Kev? I don't know. How many's there? Kevin handed a torn strip of blotting paper to Martina. 3. Well, then the answer is, whatever there was at the start, that's the 3 I gave to ye, and the 3 that's there. So the first amount minus 6 is what I had. Pa took a head torch from one of his pockets and began carefully filling the papers with the contents of the box. Kevin's attention went back out the window. What can you see? I don't know, Martina. There's a glow on the horizon. They might have hit Ballymote already. Pa looked up from the spliff. The light from his torch temporarily blinded the others. He scratched his head and continued rolling the joint. Ah, come on, Kev. Why would an alien race travel billions of light years across space to vaporise Ballymote? Think about what you're saying. It's way more likely they've gone for a big industrial target, like Sligo. Don't be daft, pa. There's the Mart and Scar railway station. It's less than 4 miles from the N4. Of course they're going to target it. Kevin leaned closer towards the window. Anyways, it's too hard to tell with that comet up there. And there's a thing. It's obvious that comet is light from the alien mothership. And you can bet the government have known about this for months. Why the fuck wouldn't they just have let us know? You'd swear they wanted the aliens to win. Martina stood up and walked to the door. We have to warn the others. Pa shone the torch into the tin. This stuff is deadly. Look at all that white. That's pure THC. Kevin nodded in agreement. Keep the seeds, Pa. I'm going to see if I can get them to grow. Have you two forgotten that the world is about to end? We need to let the others know. Pa didn't reply. He was focused on inserting a roach into the carefully formed papers. Well, if you don't care about them, I do. I'm going up there right now. Someone's got to go. Martina's voice cracked as she spoke. It's fate. Fate we ended up in a B&B with satellite reception. Fate that I'm the one to warn. Fine. Ye stay here to wallow in the dark. It's like the president said, we will not go gently into the night. She watched Pa slowly get some papers ready for another spliff and sat back down next to him. Well, except that I will go quietly into the night. Do you think the aliens are up there already? Pa sparked a lighter. He sat back, inhaling slowly. Smoke drifted across the room. Don't hog it all. I thought you were heading up to the woods. I am. I will. In a while. Pass that over, will you? Kevin began pacing across the room. Something about this doesn't add up, lads. He sat back down on a chair near their door. This all happened too quick. The aliens must have had a spy to give them coordinates for our cities. Someone here. Someone who told them where to strike and when the time was right. Has to be Jerry McLaughlin. Pa handed the joint to Martina. How? Jerry McLaughlin from up in Cairns Hill? Yeah, him. Sure of it. Do you know he cleared the whole of zero tolerance? Pa started rolling a joint as he spoke. There's 57 sub-basement levels in that game. 57. Took him 20 hours straight. Has some going. Kevin stopped pacing. Yeah? Well, how come you never see him out drinking? That's because he's too busy signalling the aliens. And can you really be sure he's cleared zero tolerance? Where's the proof? No, there's something not right there. Oh, I don't know, Kevin. He spends all his time up in the house. I don't see where he could be signalling them from. Are you sure it could be him? Very sure. He's doing it up in the house, using his computers. Well, look, tell me this. Have you ever seen him eating? Huh? No. And I tell you why. Because he's an alien. That's why. Pa finished rolling the new joint, and Martina stubbed out the last one before rejoining the conversation. I saw him eating a cheese sandwich once. Pa slouched back into the sofa. A fog of smoke surrounded him. Kevin tapped his foot on the floor. He had us all fooled. It was on the Strandhill bus. There was lettuce in it and everything. All right, okay, Martina. I heard you the first time. You don't have to keep banging on about it. So Jerry McLaughlin is not an alien. So what? It's hardly going to help us stop the invasion. Sure it won't, Pa. Pa gave a little cough. Sorry, lads. What are we talking about? Jerry McLaughlin. Jerry McLaughlin? Do you know he cleared all 57 sub-basement levels of zero tolerance? Pa, would you just hand me over the joint for Kevin? Sorry, Kev. I realised you had none of the last one. Martina took hold of it, took a deep drag, and sat back. Pa, what do you think we should do about the aliens? I don't know, Martina. I'm not really an expert in that kind of thing. We all saw the speech earlier. It looks like they've a plan. There's units in the army who train for this. I suppose we should just sit and wait for them to do what they have to do. Wait for them to do what? Asked Kevin, suddenly animated. Get themselves killed? F-16s against alien spacecraft. How's that going to work? Have you got rocks in your head, huh? There's nothing. Wait for what? What's the fucking Air Corps going to do? 6 PC-12s. There's probably only 2 of them working. They're not even set up for night flying, for fuck's sake. It'd be like trying to fight a grizzly bear with a tea bag. Martina leaned over and gently tapped Kevin on the elbow with the spliff. Kevin nodded and took it in his hand. He drew greedily on it. Kevin's foot stopped tapping, and he sank back from the edge of his chair. Pa slowly set up the papers for a third joint. He flicked a bit of stem onto the floor. Tell you what, that MC was annoying earlier. Like, what's the point in that? Seriously. Whoever gave that fucker on microphone should be shot. The music was deadly, but when he started the party was like a fucking aerobics class. Such a headmelt. It was just coming up at the time too. You don't think he was one of them? Asked Martina. What, the aliens? No way, not a chance. No alien commander worth his salt would trust an invasion to scutter and shite talk. You don't need to be Terry Wogan to work that one out. But think about it. It makes sense. Lure everybody to a party in the woods and then strike when they're distracted. Pa, we've got to go up there and warn them. You're right, Martina. But not about the MC. He was just a gobshite. Here, spark that one up. Kevin began quietly muttering to himself. Lads, no, not that. No, that won't work. But if I just... gravity needs to work in all directions. And 3 circuit boards. Are you okay, Kev? Yeah. Kevin stubbed out the joint on the arm of the chair and tucked the remains into his shoe. He cleared his throat. Lads, I know how to save the world. If listening to this story sets you on a path to building a superluminal hyperdrive, you should know that you're going to need a microchip to process a 16-bit instruction set. Luckily, they're cheap and easy to obtain. However, when the invasion took place back in 1996, it was a bit more tricky to get your hands on one. Chapter 2. Kevin stood up and walked towards the window. We need to build a spaceship. The statement was met with silence. Now, I know you think it sounds crazy. That's because it is crazy, muttered Martina. You're just thinking that because you've never built one. But ask yourself this. Where's the one place the invaders won't expect to find humans? Neptune? Close, Pa. Inside their command centre is where. We'd take them totally by surprise. And once inside it, it'd be no bother to fuck up all the controls. Kevin began pacing back and forth as he talked. I don't know why I never thought of it before. All we need are some wheels in static equilibrium. Then we move one clockwise. If the bearings are good enough, it'll continue to rotate. And then if we bolt a hammer to it, it'll turn till it's pointed straight up and fall. That'll give an anti-clockwise force on the first wheel. If I stick a spring at the bottom, it'll bounce back up with an opposite impulse and gain energy from the gravitational field and repulse the positive gravitational charge of matter. Then we just point ourselves and it at the mothership and we're there. The room was briefly silent again when he finished. It's very early in the morning for that kind of stuff. What do you think, Martina? Sorry, I spaced off. Oh, I'm sure it's great, Kev. We should still warn the others. Kevin was now doing laps of the room with excitement. We need a processor and something that can insulate the drive and a large battery. Kev, slow down. You're going to do my head in. Here, skin up. Pa handed Kevin the tobacco tin. I'll try to get the van started. We should warn the others before we do anything. Kevin handed the tin to Martina as Pa walked out. Actually, will you skin up, Martina? I need to write down the materials we're going to need. The van Pa went to was a 10-year-old 3-litre Ford Transit. It was parked sideways across a shingled driveway outside a B&B in South Sligo. It had served well for 5 festival/fruit picking seasons. Its disadvantages were rusty locks, a missing driver's side window, torn upholstery, and it was difficult to start. Its advantages were it could handle rough driving, and at a push it could comfortably sleep 4 adults and a dog. Pat climbed into the cab and turned the ignition. Bram! The sputter of the engine made its way indoors. "Martina, will you hand me the cardboard from the papers? I need to make a list." Bram. Clunk. "No, Kev, I need it for roach material." Bram. "Ah, come on, I'm trying to save the world." Bram. Bram. "Fine, you can have half of it." Bram. 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 "Sounds like Pa's got the van going, Kev. We better head." Kevin handed over a tiny rectangle of cardboard as they left. "Here's a list of stuff we're going to need. Make sure and give that to Pa. Once you get the stuff, I'll build the engine." Martina and Kevin jumped into the cab of the van and it rattled out onto the road. The sun was long gone, but the eerie light of a comet lit the sky. It would have been a journey best suited to silence, but Pa gave out about the MC all the way. "What'd you say to call him, Martina?" "Billy the Rant." The van pulled off the main road onto a boreen, and from there onto a forestry track. "Billy what?" "The Rant. He's a poet." "Oh, all right, fair enough. I'm still not going up to him, though. You do it." "No way. It's Kev's idea." "You go up there, Kev. You know how to explain all the technical stuff." "Fine so, lads. I'll do the talking." The throb of a bass drum grew louder as they made their way along the track. Every now and then a straggler from the party wandered out of the trees. The van pulled into a sloped clearing that was being used as a car park. It was not far from the car park to a larger clearing where decks and a sound system had been set up, but another speaker played noisily in one corner. A small crowd danced messily around it. One of the group staggered towards the van, clutching a flagon of cider. The woman had the bedraggled look of someone aged roughly between 25 and 80, and who neither knew nor cared either. "Fuck the system," she said cheerily, and stuck her head in the window. Kevin nodded back towards her. "Oh yeah, planet Earth has been attacked by aliens and most of the world's cities have been destroyed." The woman stared blankly. Her focus was only partly on what was in front of her. "The comet is their mothership, and they'll soon have destroyed all the world's armies." Something sparkled in the woman's eyes. "Woohoo!" she shouted, and stuck her head back out of the window. She began yelling at the rest of the group, and they called back. "Babylon is falling!" "Yeah, woohoo! Fuck Babylon! Tear it down!" She turned back towards Kevin and smiled, muttered, "Nice one," and staggered back to the group. Pa parked the van along the edge of the makeshift car park. The three passengers climbed out and headed along a narrow trail to where the party was taking place. Music was part of the landscape now, and it was getting louder. A trail of paraffin-filled lamps led them through the trees into the party. At one end of a large clearing was a set of decks flanked by 2 stacks of speakers. A crowd pulsed and throbbed in between the trail and the speakers. Martina pointed to a figure standing in front of the decks and gesturing wildly at the dancers. "You see the skinny blonde-haired fella in front of the decks, Kev? With the beard and the flat top? That's Billy the Rant. He's meant to be sound enough. Just tell him what the story is." Kevin made his way through the crowd towards the front of the speakers. Pa and Martina waited at the other end of the clearing, soaking up the atmosphere for the second time that night. Billy the Rant gurned relentlessly and his eyes bulged while Kevin explained. "That's deadly, but we're not locking the tunes off, man." "It's not deadly. I mean, it is deadly serious. Can you at least give me the mic so I can warn the crowd?" Billy handed Kevin a microphone. "Work away, man, but to the beat, yeah?" Kevin looked at the crowd swaying with the music. 3 spotlights at the decks lit up those nearest him. Shadows swarmed and danced beyond them. He brought the microphone to his face. "Planet Earth has been attacked by alien spaceships. Wump, wump, dudda, dudda. Most of the major cities have been destroyed. Rang, wump, wump, dudda, dudda. The world's armies are going to launch an offensive any moment. Wump, wump, dudda, dudda. They'll all be wiped out. And we will be too, unless we do something right now." Billy placed his hand on the microphone. He stuck a finger on his lips, smiled a toothy grin, and took the microphone back. The music stopped on a thundering bass drop. Billy began pacing up and down. Boom! The sound of a single note echoed through the trees, followed by silence. The crowd had fallen quiet too. Boom! "Where are all my people?" Billy had just finished yelling when the note struck again. "Where are all my fucking people at?" Boom, and silence. followed by a kick drum. Boom. The notes began to increase in tempo, before ripping through the octaves and settling into a pattern. Psychedelic sounds zipped and whirred into the night. The crowd cheered. Whoop, whoop, fucking hardcore, yeah, to the beat, to the beat. All my people are right here. Billy turned and handed the microphone back to Kevin, grinning again. Sweat was dripping from his forehead, and several of his bottom teeth were missing. He motioned for Kevin to continue. Kevin cleared his throat. We're going to build a spaceship and destroy the alien mothership. The crowd and Billy were now bouncing up and down. It's going to be powered by the world's first superluminal hyperdrive. Billy yanked the microphone out of Kevin's hand and started roaring. Hypo, we're going fucking hyperdrive, whoop, whoop. The crowd roared. He turned to hand the microphone back to Kevin, but Kevin was gone. Pa and Martina saw Kevin approaching from a good distance. He stuck out in the crowd. His face was like thunder. You're right, Pa, that fella's a dipstick. Told you. So what now? Asked Martina. We're just going to have to save the world by ourselves. You and Pa can go and fetch the materials. I'll make a take-off strip below the car park. Martina, Pa and Kevin followed the trail back to the makeshift car park. Martina and Pa climbed into the cab of the van and Pa began the process of starting it. Kevin paced over to the opposite edge of the clearing, looking at the gaps between the trees. What you up to? Came a voice from behind him. Its owner was dressed in a leather jacket and jeans and had a full head of dreadlocks, and was unsteady on his feet. Kevin picked up a stick and tried using it to measure the distance between tree branches. Measuring a takeoff pad for a spaceship. Oh yeah, done that plenty of times myself. Not too bad here. You have it pretty easy. I had to make one once on the side of a mountain in a full force gale. And I tell you, there was no lights from a party to help me. Why don't you make it on the other side of the hill? Kevin didn't reply. The other clearing is closer to the moon, but you probably didn't know that. Have you got any tobacco? Here, snapped Kevin. He reached into one of his pockets and fired a pouch onto the ground. The owner of the voice began rolling a cigarette and stepped closer to Kevin as he did. It was clear he wanted to involve himself in the activity. Bram! Pa was struggling with the ignition. First time to make a launch trip, huh? Can be a hard thing to get right. I was like you when I started too. I learned pretty quickly though. Ended up building them all over the world. Don't mean to boast, but I could clear a takeoff strip in my sleep at this stage. Have you any more papers? Kevin handed over a cigarette paper. Fuck's sake, he muttered. Bram, Bram. The van sounded louder, but was still not moving. What's your name? Kevin. Mine's Paul, but people call me Terry. Paul turned and shouted behind him. Hey, Tony, there's a fella here making a takeoff pad for a spaceship. A voice replied from the shadows. Oh yeah, made plenty of them over the years. Pretty easy to do it here though. Not like some of the ones I've had to make. Bram, clunk. The van sputtered into life. Can I get a light off you? Asked Paul. Kevin was now struggling with his task. It would have been a tall order on a good day, but darkness, the noise of the party, and a sputtering van were making it very difficult for him to think. He did not welcome the addition of two drunken experts. Would you like me to smoke it for you too? He threw the lighter on the ground. Take it easy, mate. There's no need to get uptight about space travel. When you get to be as good at me, you'll find it no bother. Tony, I was just telling Kevin here that he should make the strip on the top of the hill. Tony staggered over to them and propped himself against a branch. He seemed pleased to have an audience and appeared ready to hold court. You won't notice, Terry, because you're too young. But the top of a hill is always the closest to the moon. Good to meet you, Kevin. Can I get a smoke off you? Bram, bram, bram. The van drove out of the clearing and onto the forestry track. Kevin watched it disappear between the trees, glanced towards his two new advisors, rolled his eyes, and went back to measuring. It's going to be a long night, he muttered. Chapter 3. Pa turned the van from the forestry track and onto a boreen leading to the main road. He was perched forward on the driver's seat, carefully gauging the distance between the ditches. Martina was sat back in the seat beside him. Are you scared, Martina? Not really. I'm just not too sure how this plan's going to work. Trust Kev. He's pretty smart. At least when it comes to this sort of stuff. He's hardly going to send us off on a mission for nothing. I suppose. Martina cracked the ring pull from the top of a beer can. Where'd the Dutch gold come from? Oh, I took a couple of your man's cans from the back. Sure, he's hardly going to miss them. Do you want one? Wait, whose cans? I don't know. The piss head asleep in the back there. Pa slowed the van to a crawl and glanced over his shoulder at the partition to the back. Hold on, what? Is there someone in the back? Yeah, thought you knew. What the fuck? How long have they been there? I don't know, Pa. Since earlier tonight, I suppose. I thought he was a friend of yours. Shit! Did you not hear what Kev said? There's alien spies about. We'll be vaporised in a heartbeat if he's one of them. Pa braked and swung the van towards the entrance to a small field. When this thing stops moving, Martina, open your door and run like fuck, okay? Pa turned to see an empty space and open door where Martina had been. The van rattled violently to a standstill. Pa jumped out his door and dived behind a hedge. Pa! Is that you? Whispered a voice. Fuck, Martina, you can move when you want to. Stay low. We need to... They were interrupted by the sound of banging from inside the back of the van, and then it began rocking from side to side. Looks like we got out in the nick of time. Whatever was in the back is awake. I can see that, Pa. But we're going to need the van back. What do I do? I've an idea. Just follow my lead, okay? Pa placed his hand on Martina's shoulder and began shouting over the hedge. Hey! Spaceman! There's a squad of commandos out here, and we've the van surrounded. Open the door and throw your weapon out. And no tricks. If you try anything smart, we'll fucking incinerate you. He then turned and whispered to Martina. If you see a tentacle coming out of the door, run for your life. The van rocked again, and the door handle rattled. The back door's tricky to open, Pa. Maybe the creature's stuck. Don't shoot! I'm unarmed! Shouted a voice. I think I've been kidnapped. Help me! I'm trapped! I don't think that's an alien, Pa. You're probably right, but we should be careful. Help! Came the voice again. How will we know for sure if it's not a trick? I don't know. Or wait, I've an idea. What about telekinesis? I'm not sure, Pa. I've never tried it. No, not for us, for the alien. I'm pretty sure that's how they communicate. What do you mean? I mean we can set a trap. Pa shouted again. How many fingers am I about to hold up? What? Replied the voice. How many fingers am I about to hold up? What? Are you for real? Answer the question, spaceman. 3. Pa flashed a grin and a thumbs up at Martina. Wrong. 4. Fair play. Just had to be sure you weren't an alien. Hold on and I'll open the door for you. The person that stepped out of the back of the van smelled of beer and urine. He was grateful to be out of the van and not facing a hail of bullets. He was also grateful to be offered a lift back to the party, and happy to make small talk. Sorry again about that. I must have got into the wrong van, or else the lad stuck me in yours for a joke. Anyway, what's you at a party? Not a bad night, huh? Yeah, not bad. Except now we need a spaceship to stop an alien invasion, which is going to be a ton of hassle. You take a G2 been at the acid. How would you know? I'm not sure if we've any left though. If you're looking for some. Martina, do we? No thanks lads. You're grand. I leave you to it. Some night for it though. What with the comet and all? You mean the alien mothership? I guess so. Shit! Pa jammed on the brakes and turned to his passengers. I've just realised I've been driving with the lights on. We're a sitting duck target for them. He turned the lights off, peered up at the sky, and continued driving.
Jesus, man, will you keep the lights on? I mean, lads, the aliens are probably back up in their flying saucer, yeah? So you might as well drive with the lights on, yeah? Just so you don't kill someone. Actually, do you know what, lads? I just remembered I have to fetch something out of the woods here. Can you pull over? But we're nearly back at the party, are you sure? Yeah, that's grand. Just let me out.
Pa pulled the van up.
Right, lads, have a good one, and good luck with the aliens.
The man was gone before Pa or Martina could reply. Sound man, that fella.
Yeah, pure sound. He even left us a bag of cans.
I tell you what, Martina. He gave me some hop. I was full sure there was an alien in the van.
Me too. Goes to show, you can't judge a book by the cover.
What do you mean?
He looked exactly like a human, and it turned out he was a human.
I don't know, it's just a saying.
Anyway, we should go and see how Kev is getting on.
Pa and Martina found Kevin exactly where they had left him. He was sitting at the edge of a makeshift car park smoking. There was no sign of a takeoff strip. Pa walked over to him and gestured towards the trees.
You haven't made much progress.
Yeah, well, I've had Beavis and Butthead helping me. Kevin nodded towards his two new friends, who were now standing next to a tree and bickering over the finer points of space travel.
Did you two get the materials?
What materials?
The fucking materials you went off to get. What materials do you think? Oh shit, sorry Kev, I forgot all about them. Pa, I was supposed to give you a list of stuff we need to get for the spaceship.
Martina passed a tiny piece of card to Pa, who squinted at it.
Kev, is this a joke? What the fuck is 16BCPU? Do you think I'm James Bond? What's the point of writing us a list in code?
It's a 16-bit microprocessor. We need it to control the gravitational charge in the hyperdrive. If we don't get hold of one, there's no hope for humanity. Kevin glanced between Martina, Pa, and the sky, and his drunken advisors.
Fuck it. This is pointless. We can do nothing without one. I might as well just give up.
Martina lit a joint and passed it to Kevin.
Take it easy, it's not your fault. It doesn't matter whose fault it is. We're running out of time. Every human that ever lived is going to die. And all because I couldn't get hold of a stupid microchip.
Pa clicked his fingers.
Jerry McLaughlin's into computers. He's bound to have one. We could call up to him.
Kevin took a slow drag of the spliff and spat behind him.
I'm not calling up to Jerry McLaughlin. He's a bollocks. I suppose it is late to be calling.
Pa took hold of the joint and inhaled.
He might be asleep by now.
He slowly exhaled.
But lads, you know what? We should go and wake him. It's the end of the world.
Martina nodded in agreement.
Jerry won't mind. We could ring him up a few cans. Plus, he'd be saving humanity. When the cosmic object known as Hale-Bopp C 1995/01 arrived at the inner solar system, a blue ion tail followed it. Of the 5,744,212,979 people who saw this, only 480,327 understood it to be cover for an extraterrestrial warship. This is because very few people had access to the internet at that time. Chapter 4. Travelling from the party to Jerry McLaughlin's house took Pa, Martina and Kevin roughly 90 minutes. Pa spent this time keeping the van between the ditches and watching for alien spacecraft. Martina spent the time listening to Last Train to Lhasa on a personal stereo. Kevin divided the time between three things. 1. Drinking 2.5 cans of Dutch Gold. 2. Quietly troubleshooting issues with the spacecraft's design. 3. Loudly running Jerry McLaughlin down. Examples of this include, He thinks he's deadly with his manky denim jacket. My half-wiped arse would be cleaner. And, so what if he's loads of computers? Anyone could if they had the money. And, do you know that Jerry McLaughlin went to see Lethal Weapon 4 and he didn't even like it? When they arrived, Pa parked the van under some trees. He got out to check the coast was clear. It took him less than a second. There's a light on downstairs. Come on, Jerry must still be up. Martina climbed out of the passenger door of the van. Kev's fallen asleep, Pa. Should I wake him? Nah, let him sleep. He'll need to sober up for the spaceship. We can get the spaceship thing, the microprocessor. Yeah, I suppose we can. That sounds right, yeah. Jerry will know once we tell him what it's for anyway. Jerry McLaughlin was visible from outside the window of his living room, which faced onto the road. His face was lit by the computer screen, and there was a control pad in his hand. Even though there were 2 armchairs in the room, he was sitting in a small wooden chair. Back when Jerry had first moved into the house, he used to tape bin liners over the windows as curtains. But he later realised that he could pack a lot more into his day by just not bothering. Next to him was a table holding up an open tin of Spam, a mound of computer parts, a mug, and an ashtray. Pa knocked on the window. Who is it? Pa and Martina, replied Pa. Who? Pa and Martina. We need to borrow a microprocessor. What? A 16B CPU, shouted Pa, straining to read the tiny bit of card in the light from the window. Oh, right. Jerry's eyes never left the screen. Okay, fine. But give me a few minutes. I'm in the middle of a game. Let yourselves in. The door's open. Pa and Martina walked in the door, through the hall, and into the living room. There were bits of electronic equipment everywhere in the house. Jerry kept his eyes on the screen as they entered. Sorry to be calling so late. Only planet Earth has been attacked by aliens, and we need the microprocessor for a spaceship. Yeah, sorry, Jerry, agreed Martina. They've already destroyed most of the world's cities, and we need to do something to stop them. Have you been at the acid, lads? Yeah, but we only found out about the alien invasion after we took it. Otherwise, we'd probably never have taken it. Oh, I don't know about that, Pa. If you can't go tripping when the world is being invaded by aliens, then when's a good time? No bother, lads. I didn't mean it like that. Trust me. I know well about alien technology and the damage it can do. I was just trying to see what kind of form you're in. Here, take a seat. I'll be done in a minute. I'm just finishing up a covert airborne operation to stop a South American drugs gang. I've only one of them left to find. A virtual helicopter made its way across the computer screen and over a virtual city skyline. Gino had Elvis stashed for 16 years on the top of a skyscraper in LA. Jerry spoke absent-mindedly, and to nobody in particular. He leaned close to the screen in response to the sound of a gunshot from the speaker. Fucking sniper, he muttered. The virtual helicopter arced sideways and launched a virtual Hellfire missile towards the side of one of the virtual buildings. The building collapsed in flames. Right, that's that done. The words "Game Over" appeared on the screen. Jerry turned to face the 2 lads. A spaceship, huh? I didn't think you 2 would be into that kind of stuff. I always thought you 2 were just into partying. What kind of spaceship are we talking about? One with a superluminal hyperdrive? Yeah, Jerry, that's exactly it. Kev wants to build one to attack the aliens, but he needs a microchip, which is why we called up. I hope you don't mind. We brought cans. Martina placed a plastic bag of cans on the floor in front of the table. Thanks. Jerry immediately grabbed one and opened it. He took a long swig. First off, Kevin is full of shit. But he's right this time. A superluminal hyperdrive is exactly what you're going to need. Ah well, I suppose even a stop clock gets to tell the right time twice a day. Jerry took another long swig from the can. What type of aliens are you talking about? Well, I don't know. Did you not see the news? Pa pointed to a television sitting on the ground in the corner of the room. It'll probably be on Airtel if you turn on the telly. That thing doesn't work. And I wouldn't watch it if it did. The channels are only a mouthpiece for the government. Lads,
If ye want the truth, ye need to go elsewhere. I only pay heed to what I find online. I don't get it. What does online mean? It means computers, Pa. Watch this. Jerry typed on the keyboard next to the computer. Rows of text and images slowly began to display on the screen. He turned and grinned proudly at Pa and Martina, who just shrugged. Do you mind if I skin up? Work away, Martina. Though I don't know how you can put that shit into your bodies. There's no way you'd catch me at anything like that. Jerry paused to take another swig from the can, before typing a command into the keyboard. Aliens, he say. There's 347 open threads on aliens. He stared at the screen. Is this about the tribe of extraterrestrials in the Amazon? Everyone is talking about it. No, I don't think so, Jerry. These ones are using the comet as cover for their mothership. Well, that's what Kev said. We were watching it on the telly, and the world's armies are about to launch a counterattack. Oh, yeah, sorry, I see it now. Independently moving bodies hiding in the tail of the comet. Yeah, they have to be the attack ships. Yeah, not good. I can see why you called up. Right, if it's a superluminal hyperdrive, then you'll need a 16-bit chip. I have an old Mega Drive with one here. I just have to take it out of the housing. An alarm chimed on the computer speaker. Shit! I nearly forgot, lads. Have either of you played Chain Reaction before? No, replied Pa. Martina had slouched back in the chair making a joint and was not listening. It's not bad, Pa. You have to monitor a nuclear reactor with 40 chambers. The only downside to it is that it takes ages. Only 11 hours so far, and I'm only on level 1. But I've a system figured. I worked out how long it takes for each chamber to overheat and set an alarm. That way, all I need to do is vent the gas every so often. Jerry pointed to Pa, gestured at the game controls, and then back to the screen. When one of those boxes goes red, you just hit A. It only takes 5 minutes for each sequence. Then it's done. You just have to be sure not to hit the blue triangle, or it'll reset everything. Oh, right. Very good. Pa sounded impressed. Great. Off you go, so. Jerry handed Pa the controls. Well, sound. Okay, then. Jerry then fished out a black plastic box from the mound of computer parts on the table. He took a swig of beer and produced a tiny screwdriver. He began to unscrew the base of the box. Did you know the Mega Drive was called Genesis in the States and has a Z80 sound chip? Not bad, huh? Probably a lot better than some of that techno rave stuff that you two like. Oh, I don't know about that, Jerry. You should get out more. How many of these things do I have to vent? About 40. How do you manage to keep this up all day, Jerry? Fair play. I'm tired already. Martina sat up after taking a long drag on the joint and held it out. Pa, do you want some of this? Oh, yeah, sound. Could you take over the game for a minute? Okay. What do I do? It's easy enough. Just hit the A button when one of those boxes turns red. Pa swapped the controller for the joint. Oh, and whatever you do, don't press the blue triangle. The computer screen immediately began flashing. Lads, what have you done? Jerry dropped what he was doing and began furiously tapping on the keyboard. Fuck's sake! One of you must have hit the blue triangle. The reactor's gone into meltdown. Now I have to start all over again. I thought you were meant to hit the blue triangle. No, the opposite. I warned you not to. I don't know, Pa. Sounded to me like you told me to do it. Jerry was now sitting with his head in his hands. The images on the screen had frozen. When he managed to speak, he was calm. Look, lads, I have a lot of stuff to do. I'm not going to get time to take that chip out of its housing. You'll have to take it with you, yeah, as it is. Oh, okay, Jerry. Thanks for the help. And we're sorry about the computer game thing. Shit happens. Thanks yourself for the beer, and good luck with the spaceship. I'd like to give you a hand with it, but Chain Reaction's a rental, and it's due back tomorrow. The return trip to the party began silently. Apart from the noise of the engine, the inside of the van was quiet, and so were the roads.
Jesus, Pa, I'm falling asleep here. Me too, Martina. That's not good. We've a lot to do yet. We shouldn't have had that last joint. Yeah, probably. Here, what about the rest of the acid? Kevin has it. We could take that. It'll keep us up. Great idea, if he still has it. We'll go up there and see. Martina had to shake Kevin violently to get him to stir. Where are we? On the way back from Jerry McLaughlin's house. You've been asleep for ages. Oh, all right. Did we get the microchip? Yes, I have it here. Martina held up the Mega Drive. What? Don't tell me it's still in the housing. You'd think Jerry would have taken it out for you. He's an ignorant bollocks, that fella. Do you still have those Gatafixes, Kev? We're falling asleep here. Yeah. Kevin began fumbling in his pocket. I only took the original amount minus 6, so that means x minus 6. And the minus 6 includes the 3 I gave you. So 6 minus 3. There's one each left. Perfect. I think I've even got a bit of an old joint in me shoe too. Just the acid, Kevin. We need to keep our wits about us if we're going to build a spaceship. Chapter 5. Are those fireflies inside or outside the van? Asked Kevin. Fireflies? I've always wanted to see one. Where are they, Kev? I don't know. Either on the inside or the outside of the van. Or maybe both. Pa was driving the van along a narrow boreen. Martina was next to him, and Kevin next to her. Pa kept his eyes fixed on the road. If they're on the outside of the van, then they could be alien fighters. We'll be in tree cover soon. Do you have a bearing on them? A bearing on them? Asked Kevin sarcastically. Since when did you turn into Roger Ramjet? We're in a Ford Transit. The fucking Starship Enterprise. Be nice, Kevin. Pa is just trying to avoid the aliens. We're all in this together. It's going to be hard enough to build a spaceship without turning on each other as well. Sorry, lads. The Fireflies are freaking me out. Why don't you roll down the window and see, Kev? Why don't you roll yours down, Pa, huh? If you're so smart. I don't have one. It fell out at the strawberry fair, remember? Plus, I don't see any fireflies. Maybe they're just inside your head. Oh yeah, I forgot all about the strawberry fair. Kevin rolled down his window. That was great crack. We should go again. Do you know what? You're right, Pa. The fireflies are not inside or outside the van. They must be in my eyes. Sorry about panicking, lads. That's grand, Kev. We're all tired. We should have a few joints when we get there, just to relax before we start building. Not for me, Martina. You and Pa can. I've too much to do. Especially after that dickhead McLaughlin left the microchip stuck in his housing. The van pulled off the boreen onto a forestry track and came face to face with another vehicle. They skidded to a stop and the engine cut out. The vehicle in front flashed its headlights. Martina grabbed Pa by the arm and began yelling. The aliens are here! Reverse us out! Pa tried the ignition. Ram! They're here, Pa! Reverse the van now! I'm trying to, Martina. The engine won't start! Ram! Clunk! The vehicle facing them switched on its full beam. Kevin spoke slowly. I'm not sure that's the aliens, lads. I doubt they'd have arrived in a van. And anyway, you saw what they did to Tokyo. They would have vaporized us by now. He paused for a moment. Unless, of course, they want to torture us. Bram, bram, clunk. Martina grasped the door handle. Open the door! Pa and Martina barreled out the driver's side of the van and into a ditch. Kevin was slower to respond. He casually opened the passenger door and walked towards the light. Moments later he returned. Lads, will you come out of the muck? It's just Mark Greville. I knew I recognised the van. The van drove forward until it was level with them, and the driver's window rolled down. Martina climbed out of the ditch and smiled at the driver. Jesus, Mark, me heart. I thought you were the aliens. And then when you flashed the lights, it scared the shit out of me. Pa Pa joined Martina. Yeah, same here. Mine's pounding. Such a dose that was. What are you up to? How are you, lads? I just spent the last hour cleaning up cans dumped at the party. I tell you, there's some dirty cunts up there tonight. The window and took a look up and down the track. What's all this about aliens? Kevin joined the others. Sorry, Mark, I thought you would have known. The world's been attacked by aliens and most of the major cities have been destroyed. That's why the lads were freaking out. For a moment there, we thought you were one of them. Don't know if that's a compliment or an insult. Are you up for the after party, Kevin? Someone's taking Dex up to the cottage in Ballyfernan. You can follow me up if you want. No, sorry, Mark, I can't. I've got to build a spaceship. Kevin pointed to where Mark had driven from. Is there anyone left up in the woods? Not really. There's 2 old lads clearing back bushes, and they're horsing into it. Actually, they said they were clearing away for a spaceship. I just figured they were off their heads, so I left them at it. Apart from that, I think Pa and Martina have a fire going, but there's no music. I'm Pa, said Pa, climbing back into the Ford. Oh, sorry, mate. Of course you are. I don't know who I was thinking of. Anyway, there's only a few people left up there. Right so, good luck, lads. Pa turned the ignition and the van started instantly. Fuck's sake, typical. Now it decides to start. Good job we're not taking the van into space. Kevin scratched his head. He muttered. He climbed back into the cab alongside Pa and Martina, and both vehicles headed in opposite directions. The van found 2 people sitting around a fire when it arrived in the car park/clearing. Now, if you were to select an army to represent the fighting capacity of the human race, neither of them would make an obvious choice. But then again, at short notice, at 5 in the morning, in a conifer plantation miles from anywhere, it'd be unwise to get picky. Kevin climbed out of the van and walked over to the fire. Are you here for the spaceship? Asked a young man in a black tracksuit. Yeah, how'd you know? Kevin, I didn't recognise you for a second. I was just asking because there's 2 lads up at the top of the hill flat out getting things ready for it. Who's with you? The man at the fire was called Faf. If the battle against the invaders came down to a fist fight between humans and extraterrestrials, he would be a match for a 6'1". He worked as an electrician and his skill with wiring would have been an asset in the building of the spaceship. If he was sober. But he wasn't. His other abilities are a bit of an unknown quantity, as it took him so long to do anything nobody really noticed what he did. And that was how he got his nickname. Just Pa, Martina, Faf. I suppose you heard about the invasion. I've been listening to nothing else this last few hours. Sandra has been filling me in on everything. The Sandra that Faf was talking about was sitting next to him and was about 3 inches smaller and had a remarkable collection of beads and ribbons tied into her dreadlocked hair. Sandra also had in her possession both a lightning-fast uppercut and an encyclopedic knowledge of conspiracies. Thinking and speaking about these conspiracies occupied her every waking moment, which put great demand on her time. I wouldn't really call it an invasion, she interrupted. It's more of an awakening. The beings from the interdimensional Federation of Light have always been with us. Martina got out of the van and joined Kevin. How are you, lads? Fair play to you for getting the fire going. She turned back to the van. Pa, come on. It's your turn to skin up. If you think about it, all the world's problems come from one thing, and that is an absence of light, continued Sandra, unfazed by whether anyone was listening or not. Faf ignored her. Where were you before this, Kevin? Oh, just getting a microchip for the spaceship. Why? To modulate the gravitational field it generates. No, I mean, why are you building a spaceship? Because we're going to hit the mothership hard and knock out their command and control structure. Shouldn't the Air Corps be doing that? How the fuck are those lads going to tackle an alien force, Faf? They just don't have the equipment. They just don't. I don't know, it sounds mental, Kevin. Surely there are people trained for that sort of thing. Like who? A Space Force? Don't be daft. The Coast Guard? Whoosh! There's something moving in the trees, interrupted Martina. Pa had been on his way to the group, but stopped in his tracks. Something or somebody? Quiet, snapped Kevin. Pa scanned around him. "Because if it was something, then it could be one of the aliens," he whispered. "Will you just shut up for a minute? It sounds like chanting." The group went silent. "I don't need dum-da-dum, I don't care, dum-da-dum, I don't want dum-da-dum." "That sounds like Billy the Rant." "What's he at?" "Fuck knows," replied Sandra. "Anyway, the thing with interdimensional beings of light is that they want some chaos, but not lots. So they allow governments to use chemtrails to control people." "Where'd you say those two lads were getting things ready, Faf?" "Up at the top of the hill, Kevin. They started working even before the music stopped. It was pretty wiry, really. Everything was dancing away and you had the pair of them rattling about with shovels in the middle of everything." "Fuck's sake, the Muppets. That takeoff strip was supposed to be at the bottom of the car park." "You won't need a spaceship to reach the beings of light, Kevin. They operate in a fourth dimension that is right here," interrupted Sandra. "They are nowhere and everywhere. You just need to fold time to see them." Faf scratched his head and turned to Sandra. I'm not sure what you mean. I still can't visualize that." "That is because you're drunk, Faf. Alcohol blocks your space-time receptors." "You can't visualize it because she's talking bollocks," snapped Kevin. "You can visualize it because you can visualize anything you can know, yeah? Which is everything," came a voice from the darkness. The group went silent. "Who said that?" shouted Martina. They stayed silent until the blonde flat top of Billy the Rant emerged from the trees. "Fucking hell, Billy, you scared us. Where'd you come from?" Billy paced over to the group and sat next to the fire. "I come from the same place everyone comes from. Creation. But that is not the question each of you should ask yourselves." He looked around the group. "The real question you need to ask, yeah, is where am I going to?" "Where are you going to, Billy?" asked Martina. "Ballyfarnan." "That's 15 miles away. You're not going to walk there, are you?" "Is it really 15 miles, though?" asked Sandra. She then answered herself with another question. Or is that just what the government would like you to think? The truth is, places are not really that far from each other. It makes it easier to control us if we think we're all farther away. Don't be fooled. "Give me strength," muttered Kevin. "I'm off to build a spaceship. You can follow me up. Pa, can I take the van?" "Sure, Kev, the keys are in it. Just don't get it bogged down." Pa began rolling a joint as Kevin set about starting the van. Faf squinted at the cigarette papers. "Is that white widow I can smell?" "Spot on, Faf. I had some I was saving. Tonight seems like a good night for it." "I won't argue with that." "What's up with Kevin? He seems stressed out." "Bram." Kev's just worried about the alien invasion. And he's had nearly a full strip of acid," replied Martina. "Plus, Jerry McLaughlin left a microchip inside its housing." "Were you all up with Jerry McLaughlin?" "Yeah, we needed to get a microchip." "How is Jerry? I heard he cleared zero tolerance." "He did," replied Pa. "All 57 basement levels. That was some going, wasn't it?" "It was. You should have brought him up here for the spaceship." "He was too busy watching a nuclear reactor on his computer. Plus, himself and Kevin would end up at each other's throats. Bram, clunk." Billy the Rant had been ignoring the conversation. He jumped to his feet. "Right, it's time to move. Which way is Ballyfarnan?" Pa looked up and gestured to the papers next to him. "Are you not staying for some of the joint?" "Don't believe in smoking that stuff, mate. It's poison. It and drink. Good nutritious food is all anyone needs, yeah? I ate a chicken and a bottle of Lucozade for me tea, and I'm flying. Which way do we need to head for Ballyfarnan?" Pa pointed to the track. "You need to follow that onto the main road and..." Bram, 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 Kevin had the van started. "You only need to point, man. I only need a general idea." Pa shrugged and gestured in the direction of the track again. Billy paced back into the trees. Pa called after him. "Billy, that's not the way." "Leave him go," snapped Sandra. "That fella's wired to the moon." Chapter 6. Kevin rattled the van up through the path to where the party had been. He rolled out onto the clearing. which now stretched for over 100 metres. 2 men stood at the other end. Kevin drove the van over to them. Paul was first to spot the van. "Is that you, Kevin?" "It is. Why'd you go and make a runway up here?" Paul turned to his companion. "Look at that, Tony. Kevin just came back. The lad's like a blister. He shows up as soon as all the work is done." "Good man, Kevin. The old dog for the hard road and the young pup for the boring. You got a cigarette?" Kevin stepped out of the van and handed over a pouch of tobacco. "You got any papers?" added Tony. Kevin looked up and down the enlarged clearing. "They're in the pouch. So the ship runs along here and takes off next to the trail?" "No. The other way around, Kevin." Paul pointed to the van. "Is this what you're going using?" "That's the plan." "And what's going to be your power source?" A superluminal hyperdrive." "Good choice, Kevin. What sort of a chip are you using?" A 16-bit. It's in the van." Paul peered in the window. "I see, not bad. You left it in the housing too. Good thinking. I learned to do that the hard way. Those things scramble in a heartbeat once they're exposed to solar radiation. Tony, will you pass the tobacco when you're finished?" Tony stuck a rolled up cigarette into his mouth and handed the pouch over to Paul. He began walking slowly around the van. "Superluminal hyperdrive. Never built one. Should be pretty easy to put together though. What's your plan to compensate for cosmic anisotropy?" Kevin took a step back. Didn't think of that." "Well, you should. If you don't, then the atoms that make up you, the van, and everyone else in it will be obliterated once you start the engine. You got a light?" Kevin handed Tony a lighter. Tony cleared his throat and stared Kevin in the eyes. He spoke slowly. "Look, Kevin, there's a normal way of doing things, and then there's the way you need to do things." He lit the cigarette and handed the lighter back. "The normal thing is that nobody tells you anything about superluminal travel. So, if you need help, you have to ask for it." He took a quick drag from the cigarette before continuing. "Nobody ever does, which suits me fine. But in this case, I'm going to go on a limb and say you haven't got a fucking clue what you're doing, if you get my meaning." He looked at Paul, who was quietly listening. "Believe it or not, the normal thing is not for the two of us to spend the night bursting a gut on top of a hill making a runway for strangers. But, things being what they are, what with it being Armageddon, and you and your friends showing a willingness to save humanity, well, the decent thing to do is help." He took a long drag on the cigarette. "So, what I'm saying is, if you go back down and gather your crew, we'll have the spaceship ready." He looked over at Paul again, who nodded in agreement. "This is not the normal way for these things to work. You need to understand that. But the future of humanity is on the line. Plus, you've been very generous with your tobacco." Kevin said nothing, but turned and began to walk back down to the fire. Behind him, work had already started on the world's first superluminal hyperdrive. The Terra-class warship was the pride of the Zardonian space fleet. It could arm and deploy multiple short-range fighters. There was, still is, no conventional weapon to match it. Chapter 7. A northern summer night only ever gets dark enough to make shadows. 4 of these shadows sat around a small fire on a hill in South Sligo. One of them was talking loudly. "All of human history has been a journey leading to this moment." Sandra's theory was in full flow, and had been for 10 minutes. The other three people mostly ignored it. Martina flicked the butt of a joint into the flames. "Kev's been gone ages. We should go see how he's getting on." At that moment, cosmic object 103P/193E2 completed an orbit of the Earth. It would be one of the last things cosmic object 103P/193E2 did. Nobody around the fire noticed. "Yeah," agreed Pa. "He's probably waiting for us." Cosmic object 103P/192E2 adopted an inclination of 51 degrees and smashed the air molecules before it into 1,000 degrees of heat. If Sandra, Faf, Martina or Pa had looked up at that moment, they would have seen a white streak burning across the sky. They didn't, especially not Sandra. "People today worship at a temple of consumption. It's what the interdimensional beings of light foresaw." Martina shuffled closer to the fire and began rolling another joint. Faf took a swig of beer. He offered the dregs of the can around the group, but there were no takers. "Are yourself and Pa really going to go into space?" "I think we are." "We better head after I roll this one, Pa." "But when you get to the mothership, won't all the aliens be there?" Pa wobbled to his feet and shook his legs. "They should be, they live there. You wouldn't catch me doing that. I saw what happened in V." "Faf, that was a TV show." "Yeah, but you know what I mean. Didn't work out well for the humans." Cosmic object 103P/192E2 tore into the lower atmosphere. Martina was the first to spot it. She jumped up beside Pa. "The fuck is that?" A light trail was unmissable. The group watched in silence as it arced above them. All except Sandra. She still had a point to make. "So you see, science, religion, consumption, all these things, they were just places along the way." The light dropped from view with a loud thrup and was followed by a flash on the horizon. "Shit! That was Ballyfernan," gasped Pa. Martina kicked the flames out of the fire. "Get down, everyone." "I am down," replied Faf. "What do you mean by that was Ballyfernan?" "That was Ballyfernan gone, obliterated, destroyed by aliens." "Fuck's sake, Faf! What do you think has been going on all night?" Sandra stood up as everyone else crouched. She took a slow look around. The sky was clear again. "There was no need to quench the fire, Martina. It's a well-known fact that interdimensional beings can see in the dark." "Well, aren't they just mighty, Sandra? We still need to get to the spaceship. Are you right? You have to move quickly and quietly." Faf was next onto his feet. He turned his back to the group and towards the trees. He took 3 steps forward. "In a minute, Martina. I just need to go for a quick slash." Pa joined him. "Same here. You might as well finish rolling the joint while you're waiting." "Fine, lads. But we're definitely heading after that." Kevin had seen the white trail across the sky too. He'd been halfway along the trail, well on his way to assembling a squad of humans to defend Earth. His reactions had been quicker than the others. Instinct threw him face down beneath some trees into the darkness. The light passed overhead. He peered out from some ferns growing at the base of the trees. Even without the kerosene lights, the path was easy to make out. Turrup! The sound came from the distance. Kevin rolled over and scanned the circle of sky above the trees. He could still make out the heat trail, but there was no sign of where it ended up. "Stupid aliens! You missed me!" The flash came suddenly and from the east. It filled the skyline before disappearing. For a brief moment, everything was silent. Kevin kept his eyes on the sky and got to his feet. There was now nothing to see but stars. Kevin was undetected and determined to continue the mission. "Don't care, don't need, don't want, don't care." The words came from behind, and their source was the scraggy outline of a man. The outline bounced erratically along. "Billy, is that you?" "Don't need, don't want, dum." "Billy, is that you? Whisht, will ya?" Kevin glanced anxiously upwards as he spoke. "Everybody is themselves, yeah? Nobody can be anybody else." Why are you hiding in the bushes?
Billy, shut the fuck up, will you? They'll hear you.
Billy the Rant looked both directions along the trail. Who will hear me? And why?
What do you mean, why? Have you got rocks in your head? It's an alien invasion, and you're floating about the place like it's a strawberry fair. Do you want to get vaporised?
Billy paused before he replied.
You're the guy from the party. The hyperdrive man. Oh, that shit was fucking deadly, mate. You should head to the after party. What planet are you on, Billy? Did you not see the flash just there? The aliens just hit Ballyfarnan, so there's no after party. And soon there'll be no humanity either, unless I stop them.
Billy stepped closer and glanced at Kevin's eyes.
Calm down, mate. You look stressed. Here, were you with the group down by the fire? Come on, I'll bring you back. No, I mean, yes, I was. And I need them to crew my spaceship.
Okay. Sure, why not?
Just follow me back this way though, yeah?
Billy continued his wander, while Kevin followed carefully. Kevin glanced left, right, behind and above as they walked. Billy led them towards a break in the trees, which marked their destination.
I knew you were flying the minute you stepped up to the decks. How much acid did you have? The original amount minus X, which is equal to 6, plus 1. But that's got nothing to do with the invasion.
Didn't say it did. I was just asking you. They were now almost at the car park. Kevin pushed past Billy and strained his eyes. The fire should have been in view. Sandra saw the two men approaching, but said nothing. Kevin was moving rapidly towards the group. Billy followed behind, but with less urgency.
What the fuck are you all doing getting stoned in the dark? Did you not see the flash? The invasion has started. Is that you, Kevin?
Yeah, Martina, we need to go.
Who's that with you?
Billy. Kevin and Billy walked over to what used to be the fire. Martina pocketed the joint material and lit what she had already rolled. Faf retraced his very short journey back to the group.
Did you get your spaceship finished, Kevin?
Almost. It'll be ready when we get there.
Where is this spaceship, mate? I don't see anything.
Yeah, well, it was supposed to be here, but those two dipsticks built a runway up on top of the hill.
What two?
You were hiding in the bushes on your own when I met you. Paul and Tony. They're back up where the party was.
Paul? You mean Terry?
Nobody calls him Paul. Yeah, whatever. Him and Tony.
I didn't know those two were helping you.
Billy looked up at the sky and back at Kevin.
That's fucking deadly. Have you room for one more, yeah? I always wanted to go into space.
I need everyone. That alien mothership is probably massive. And you all need to get moving now. The world's armies won't hold them off for long.
If we go, what are we doing?
Destroying their mothership, Faf. The way I see things, the only reason they have one is because their fighters can't go far without refueling. If we smash that up on them, they're done.
What'll it be like inside the mothership? How the fuck should I know? Are you coming or not?
I don't know, Kevin. That sounds a bit too hectic. Could you just run me back up to Garchine instead? It's a spaceship, Fat, not a taxi. You're either with us or not. Martina stepped quietly between Kevin and Faf. Go easy, Kev. Everyone's tired. She handed the joint to Faf. Faf, this is kind of an all or nothing thing.
I know that, but Network 2 are showing a rerun of Magnum PI at 10.
Suit yourself. Everyone else is going.
Magnum's a good show.
But you might make more sense to help out. Think of it like this. If a load of people you know and trust decide to save the world instead of watching TV, it's probably a good idea.
Oh, I suppose you're right, Martina. I'll go so.
What's the spaceship made out of anyway?
Oh, I don't know. What's it made out of, Kev?
Spaceship parts. Will you just fucking move? Kevin marched towards the trail. He was followed by Sandra, Faf, Billy, Pa, and Martina, united in the knowledge that their destination was a freshly constructed DIY spaceship. Chapter 8. The journey along the path up to the takeoff strip did not take long. Kevin saw to that. He whisper-shouted insults all the way. In his mind, it was encouragement, and nobody seemed to care. At the top of the hill, the group was met with a break in the trees, a Ford Transit, a pile of freshly cut undergrowth, 2 men, and a long strip of clear ground. Tony and Paul stood at the edge of the clearing. "Well, Kevin, that looks like a good crew. I hope they're all ready for this." Tony scanned the group. "Jesus, Belly, don't tell me you've joined them too. You do know what they're up to, don't you?" "Yeah. When I heard you two were involved, I said I'd tag along. Always wanted to get a good look at outer space." "Hope it's worth it. It's a risky thing to do." Faf took a step backwards. "Risky? Hold on, Kevin. You didn't say it'd be risky." Sandra was the first to respond. "No, he didn't. And just because a stranger says it is, doesn't mean anything. For all we know, they are shape-shifting enemies of humanity." Tony laughed loudly, followed seconds later by Paul. "Don't worry, we're not shapeshifters." "That's for me to decide." "You can decide what you like, but it's not true. We work for NASA." "Yeah, that's right, NASA." Sandra looked unimpressed. "If that's true, then how come the pair of you are down here and not in outer space? Or faking another moon landing?" Martina grabbed Sandra by the elbow. "Just ignore them. We're trying to save the world." Sandra didn't reply, and instead fixed an unblinking stare at the 2 crusties/astronauts/shapeshifters. "Right, Kevin, we're off. Best of luck to you and your friends." Tony and Paul stepped around the group and in the direction of the makeshift car park. "Wait, lads. Will you just hang on to go through the settings?" "Don't think you have time, Kevin. Those aliens have had a head start on you. Do you know anyone nearby that does breakfast?" "Hold on. None of us have been to space before. Well, maybe Sandra. But definitely not using a hyperdrive." Martina, Pa, Billy and Sandra walked out into the clearing, hoping to get a good look at the spaceship. Sandra kept a wary eye on the 2 strangers as she moved. Kevin stood in front of Tony and Paul, blocking their way. "Look, our work is done now." "Yeah. Think of it like when we met you earlier, when I got a cigarette paper off you." "Good man, Tony. That's a great way of explaining space travel to the lad. So, when you gave us the tobacco, Kevin, it was exactly like us fixing the driver's side window." "That's right. And the lighter you gave us is the superluminal hyperdrive. Well, a superluminal hyperdrive would make one hell of a lighter. But you get the idea. What we're saying is, we're not going to smoke it for you." "Huh?" "That's the spirit, Kevin. Everybody has to start somewhere. You'll pick it up in no time." But, how do I work the hyperdrive?" "We left instructions on the steering wheel. And besides, you have the CPU to help you." "Yeah, Tony's right. You did well when you picked that chip." "Huh? What do you mean?" "That processor you picked up. It's a well-known fact that all those first-generation Mega Drives were self-aware. That's why they got replaced. You know how it is with these things. If you need help, you should ask. Bye now." Tony and Paul brushed past Kevin and continued on between the trees. Kevin stared out towards the van parked at one end of the clearing. The rest of the crew had gathered beside it. Despite the darkness, he could tell they were unimpressed. He joined them, and Pa said what they were all thinking. "That's the spaceship." "Yes." "My Ford Transit." "Yes." "I thought it'd be something a bit better. How much diesel will we need to drive to space?" "None. The van is just housing for a superluminal drive." "Oh, okay. And you're sure it's going to work?" "Probably." Kevin walked importantly around the van, opening every door as he went. He paced to the middle of the clearing and stared briefly up at the sky. The rest of the group followed his eyes. He then went back over to the rear doors of the van.
Right, Sandra, Faf, Billy, in here. Pa, you and Martina are in the cab. I'm the pilot. Sandra was first to climb in, followed by Faf. Lads, I'm scared. Billy was next. You fucking should be, mate. You're going into space in a homemade rocket. Are there any tunes in this thing, Kevin? We can't go without songs, yeah? Kevin reached into the passenger seat well, pulled out a stereo and handed it to Billy. Just this Walkman. Belongs to Martina. What's in it? I don't know. Last Train to Last, I think. Is there nothing else? No, that's it. Now keep your feet in, lads. Or whatever you do, don't touch this door till I open it. Kevin got no reply. Billy already had the stereo on. Faf was listening to Sandra, who was now loudly explaining time travel. Martina and Pa climbed into the cab, and Kevin joined them. There was a note stuck to the wheel. Martina pointed to it. What's that about? The lads left instructions for the hyperdrive. Can't be too hard to work if that's all the notes there is. What's it say? Turn key to start. That's all? Yeah, that's it. Kevin glanced down at the Mega Drive, which had been wired into the van's electric system. A red light showed it was running. The cab was silent, except for Sandra's muffled voice escaping from the back. Kevin turned and knocked on the partition. Is everyone ready back there? What? Came the muffled reply. I said, are you ready back there? Huh. Can you drop me off at the main road? I'll hitch the rest of the way. Kevin ignored the request and bent forward. He peered up at the sky and then at Martina and Pa. Well, lads, this is it. They both nodded. Kev, said Martina quietly, if this doesn't work out, I just want you to know. I suppose all humans would want you to know. Well, like, you did your best. It's a fair play. Thanks. Kevin found himself instinctively checking the wing mirrors and turned ignition. Nothing happened. Shit! He turned the ignition again. Nothing happened again. Fuck! He turned the ignition for a third time. Clump! The van was instantly transported to the middle of a giant steel room. The floor was the size of a football pitch. The walls were white and over 30 feet tall. Everything was illuminated. On one side was an enormous window. Beyond it was Earth. Thousands of light streaks flickered across the surface of the planet. These were followed by flashes, which bloomed and then disappeared. It was a thriving orb of chaos, set in stark contrast to the vast silence beyond. Fuck. Paul and Tony know their stuff. What's this place, Kev? It must be a hangar for the alien fighters. Two of the walls opened into giant corridors leading away from the room. It was silent. Apart from a handful of box-shaped robots scuttling back and forth across the floor of the room, it was also empty. Where's everyone? All fighting humans, I suppose. They probably just leave robots to run the place. One of the small box-shaped robots approached the van carrying a length of hose. Pa and Martina ducked behind the dashboard, but Kevin didn't move. The robot paused as it got near, turned, and scuttled away. Pa watched it go. It's as if we don't exist. Well, we don't. At least as far as that thing is concerned. Robots don't know anything outside of what's been programmed into them, which is bound to be just a load of alien stuff. I'm pretty sure the form of a Ford Transit is not in their code. Pa smiled and moved to open the passenger door. Great. Come on so, lads. Let's do this quickly. Kevin's arm shot across the van and grabbed the lock. What the fuck are you doing? How do you know that the air is breathable? For all we know, extraterrestrials breathe cyanide. Keep that closed. Okay, Kevin. But what are we going to do now then? Pa had no sooner finished asking the question when a face appeared at the window. It was Billy Durant, who was gesturing at the headphones on his ears and giving the thumbs up sign. Kevin rolled the newly installed window down. He needn't have bothered. Billy was roaring at the top of his voice. Is this your CD, Martina? Fucking great tunes for the night that's in it. They go perfect with the visuals. Billy pointed to the view of Earth and its starry backdrop, and grinned. Jesus, Billy, you put the heart sideways on me. Me too. Take it easy and stop shouting, will you, Billy? We're supposed to be on a mission. Can't hear you, mate. The music's too loud. Billy turned and wandered off into one of the corridors leading from the room. Kevin stepped out of the van and signalled for the others to follow. Right so, I suppose that proves the air is breathable. All we need to do now is save the human race. Zardonian fighters call it feeding the machine. It means being put to death. It's what happens when a Zardonian fighter makes a mistake. Zardonian fighters don't make many mistakes. Chapter 9. The group of human invaders had not made a good job of sticking together. This wouldn't have been a problem in the landing bay, but they were now moving deeper into the spaceship. Sandra and Faf lagged behind, and nobody had seen Billy since they arrived. Keep up, lads, we haven't got all day. Kevin was moving erratically, either running between the hatches that led off the corridor, or standing dead still and scratching his head. At first, he'd been certain that the control room would have been close to the landing deck. A lengthy search around it found that this was not likely. The crew were getting tired. If there was going to be a mutiny, Martina would be the one to lead it. Where are we now, Kev? She asked. 50% along the main access route. We're probably very close to the control room. We just need to check a bit further down this corridor for the core access. Martina rolled her eyes, shrugged, and slouched down along a wall. The corridor was about 15 foot wide and white. Whatever blend of materials it was finished with reflected light brilliantly and made everywhere look the same. She nodded towards Pa as her hips sank to the ground. The only interesting thing they'd seen so far was the view from the large window in the landing bay, and it looked away from the ship. Everywhere was deserted. Even the small service robots had now scuttled out of sight. Pa crouched down against the opposite wall and frowned back towards Martina. Kevin had paced ahead of them and was frantically opening up the handful of doors leading off the corridor. Martina gestured towards him. Fuck this, Pa. This fella hasn't a clue where we are. Give him a chance. He's doing his best. Is it my turn to skin up? Martina tossed a tin and a pouch of tobacco across the corridor. It rattled noisily and distracted Kevin from the search. What are ye at, lads? We're not up here for a holiday. Get up and start looking for the control room. We're just taking a break, Kev. It's really late. Or really early. I forget which. Anyway, the whole place looks the same and we're tired. Martina's right, Kev. You go ahead if you want. We need a break. Fuck's sake. You've only been looking for 5 minutes. But there were 5 long minutes, weren't they, Martina? Anyways, it's far better to do a search properly than to rush it. We'll be in much better form for finding the control room. Exactly. We'll be much better form to search for the control room after a bit of a rest and a smoke. Pa arranged the materials on the floor and began rolling. The flecks of twig and tobacco that escaped the papers stuck out against the bright floor. They instantly became the only sign of dirt. I'll say one thing for the aliens. They know how to keep the place clean. Kevin watched the joint being finished, walked back to Martina and Pa, and squatted between them. Yeah, but their spaceship's a pile of crap. Pa lit the joint and took a slow drag. What do you mean, Kev? That's pure flimsy. Whatever material they have in the walls is shite. Oh, I don't know about that. It looks good to me. Anyway, the thing has gone billions of light years, so it can't be too bad. Oh yeah? Snapped Kevin. Watch this. He stood up and flung a kick at the wall next to Pa. There was a dull thud, but nothing else happened. He flung another kick,
this time with a running start, and managed to put a small dent into the wall. See what I mean? Oh, all right, Kev. Fair enough. Here, have a smoke of this. Kevin sat down next to Pa, grabbed the joint, and inhaled. He held it up for Martina. She stepped over towards him and pointed to where they had walked from. Well, what time do you think we'll be back? I've no idea. Kev, this was your plan. It still is my plan. But how the fuck was I supposed to know the aliens built their spaceship arseways? A flash of movement meant Kevin's question went unanswered. It happened so quickly that none of the three could react. Pa was the only one to get a good look. What the fuck was that? Huh? Martina swung around, but whatever was there had gone. What did you see, Pa? I dunno. It looked like a demon running, I think. You better be joking. Did you see it too, Kev? I saw a shadow flying by. A big one? Big enough. Shit, lads, the two of you are freaking me out. What kind of demon was it, Pa? Oh, I dunno, a regular one, I think. Fuck's sake, Pa, will you answer her properly? What the fuck is a regular demon? A big head, red eyes. I dunno. It was moving very quickly and I'm stoned. We should go back. No, we need to search harder. No, go back. Martina carefully moved in between Pa and Kevin and pulled nervously on the joint. What if Sandra was right? About what? About those two lads up on Corn Hill being shape-shifting demons. Oh, Tony and Paul? Yeah, them. If you think about things, it was all a bit convenient that they happened to be about the minute you decided to build a spaceship. How well do you know those two? Not well, I suppose. The pair of them just walked up to me when I was setting up the runway. But wasn't that runway supposed to be below the car park? It was. And we launched from the top of the hill. Yeah, but I couldn't help that. They made the runway up there while we were off getting the CPU. And what about the hyperdrive then? Did you see them build that? Well, no, I didn't. I went to get Chi. But it worked, didn't it? I suppose. It just seems funny that there's nothing about up here and suddenly a demon turns up. Pa stepped into the middle of the corridor and faced back towards the landing deck. It didn't really turn up, it just skittered by. Martina stood up next to Pa. We should warn Sandra and Faf. It was heading their direction. No need. Here's Sandra now. Sandra strolled casually towards them and tapped her wrist as she got close. Time's it, lads. Are you okay, Sandra? Where's Faf? I'm fine. Faf went looking for a toilet. This place is massive. It's going to take us ages to search it. Did you see a demon? One ran by us. Pa saw it. It had a big head, didn't it, Pa? Sandra glanced back down the corridor. Yeah, I saw it, but it wasn't a demon. It was a Nephilim, and it must be lost. Martina, Kevin and Pa waited for her to continue talking, but she didn't. She pointed at the joint. Do you mind if I skin up? It feels like I've been walking around for hours. Pa handed over the tin and Sandra sat cross-legged against the wall. Kevin tapped his foot impatiently. What the fuck do you mean the demon must be lost? Nephilim are normally earth-dwelling, so it's bound to have got mixed up if it ended up here. But never mind that. It's going to take forever for us to check every single room by hand. There must be an easier way to find the spaceship controls. Well, there's not, snapped Kevin. You lot go back and wait in the van if you want. He glanced back towards the direction of the landing bay. Sorry, I mean our spaceship. Martina sat down beside Sandra. What did you mean by a lost Nephilim? Nephilim mostly hang out in an underground ice fortress back on Earth, so it shouldn't really be up here. My guess it was moved up here by the interdimensional beings. But where did it go? Are they dangerous? Hard to tell, Martina. I know one thing though. They're deadly at hiding. Did you know Hitler was one? Kevin turned away from the group. Good Jesus, here we go again, he muttered. Pa threw a lighter to Sandra and squatted down beside Martina. We'll be with you in a few minutes, Kev. We're just going to have a quick smoke to wind down. That demon was freaky. Do what the fuck you like. I'm carrying on with the mission.
Someone's got to save the world. Kevin shook his head, muttered under his breath again, and returned to his business of frantically yanking doors open. Sandra finished rolling the joint, tapped the roach off the floor, and lit it. She took a drag and turned to face Martina and Pat. "I'll tell you something. Kevin's plan is going to take forever. This ship is far too big for 6 people to search." Martina glanced along the corridor towards Kevin and nodded. "Yeah, Kev's sound and all, but he doesn't seem to have a clue what he's at." She watched Sandra pass the spliff to Pat. "You know, if Jerry McLaughlin was here, he'd have the control centre found in 10 minutes. Pat took a quick drag from the spliff and passed it to Martina, whose eyes had been focused on it. "Yeah, but himself and Kev would be knocking lumps out of each other in less than 5 minutes. Martina glanced towards Kevin again. He was just barely visible in the distance, battering his shoulder against another entrance. "What's the story there, Pat? The lads are both, well, you know, nerds. You'd think they'd get on." "As far as I know, it's got to do with computer games. I think Jerry stole a code from Kevin, or so he says. Or else Kevin made a code, or some fucking thing. It's just some bullshit between the two of them." Martina handed the joint back to Pat. "Thanks. Anyway, Kevin thinks Jerry's been using a code to allow him to win computer games, and Jerry thinks Kevin's been going about town telling people that he cheats." Sandra nodded in agreement. "That's because he has." "Are ye serious? Who gives a fuck?" "Well, the two of them do, but you're right, Martina. If anybody'd know their way about an alien spaceship, it'd be Jerry McLaughlin." The group sat smoking in silence for several minutes. Sandra and Pa watched as Martina finished the last of the joint and staggered to her feet. "Lads, I've been thinking. I know this sounds paranoid, but say this is a trap, and shape-shifting demons wanted us here. Well, they surely won't just let us spin off again whenever we like." "Ah, Martina, that doesn't just sound paranoid. It is paranoid. You've been listening to Sandra too much. No offence, Sandra." Sandra wasn't listening. She had turned her attention to the making of another joint. Kevin was out of sight, but his banging and cursing was within hearing. It was clear the search was not going well. "Do you know what, lads? We could just go and get Jerry McLaughlin. I mean, it only took a second to fly up here. Couldn't we just nip back in the van and pick him up?" Sandra said nothing. Pa scratched his temple. "I dunno, Martina. Jerry was in the middle of a computer game when we left him. And anyways, Kevin never go for it." "It's your van, Pa, isn't it? Why not?" "I suppose that does sound like a better plan than just sitting here. Who's going to tell Kev?" Martina rolled her eyes, nodded, and walked in the directions of Kevin's frustration. Sandra lit the joint. Pa looked at the small dent Kevin had put in the wall and shrugged. It was clearly marked, but the damage was just not going to be enough to prevent the annihilation of humanity. Crewman T-631 was born on Euretro. He spent most of his early life waiting for bulk harvesters. They would always arrive at the end of the annual cycle and bring whatever food they wanted back to the Zardonian homeworld. The Zardonians are the most heavily militarized species in the known universe. Luckily for the citizens of Euretro, there was always plenty to spare. Crewman T-631 joined a bulk harvester crew as soon as he was old enough and moved to the Zardonian homeworld. After 6 solar cycles and 14 attempts, crewman T-631 was accepted into the Zardonian space fleet. He immediately signed up to the Terra-class ship. Guarding a Terra-class warship from a species who cannot yet travel to their nearest planet is a one-man job. Crewman T-631 did not expect to have to do anything while the invasion of Earth was taking place.
which was why it came as a total surprise when the scanners picked up an enemy craft on the launch deck. It came as an even bigger surprise when the crew immediately split up and adopted a seemingly chaotic attack pattern. None of his training had prepared crewman T631 for this, so he did the only thing he could think of to do. He panicked and stowed himself on the enemy craft. Crewman T631 figured it was better to take his chances with the enemy than face certain death at the hands of his commander. Chapter 10. The defence of planet Earth was progressing slowly. The humans involved were simultaneously scared, frustrated, and bored. And Kevin and Martina were discussing Jerry McLaughlin. No fucking way. But you know he'd have us in the control room in 5 minutes. I said, no, Martina. It'll take us forever to find it otherwise. No. He smells of cheese. What's that got to do with it? I don't want my van smelling like that. It's not your van. And Pa and Sandra agree with me. We need Jerry here. I said no. The spaceship controls are nearby, and any minute now I'll find them. Bullshit. A minute, Kev. You have no idea where you are in the ship. I know fine well where I am. Okay then. What are all these empty rooms? Some sort of storage area. A storage area for what? Just general, stuff for the fighters. We both know that's bollocks. You haven't a clue, Kev. I do. And anyway, we've no time to go back and get Jerry now. We don't have time not to, Kev. Come on, be reasonable. Kevin paused before he spoke again. Okay, Martina. But only because you all wanted it. Not because I couldn't find the control room. Fine then. Because I would, if you'd let me. Sure, whatever you say. Martina was grinning when she walked back to Sandra and Pa. Kevin was frowning and trailing a dozen steps behind. Sandra was first to her feet and began leading the way back to the van. How would you get Kev to agree to this? Pa walked next to Martina. Don't jinx it, Pa. He wasn't exactly keen. The four made their way back into the room with the giant window. Their van faced away from them and sat in contrast to its pristine surroundings. Pa glanced back to Kevin and looked out at the view. We better get going quickly before he changes his mind. Earth was still visible in the window. Streaks of light scarred the atmosphere. The battle for the planet was in full swing. Pa pointed towards it. You know, Martina, this is going to sound weird. But, well, looking down on that from here feels like the safest place to be. Or the kind of place you'd send someone if you wanted them out of the way. Huh? What do you mean by that? Are you still going on about those two crusties at the party? You're starting to worry me with all this paranoia. Just think about what you're saying, Martina. If those two were aliens, why the fuck would they bother conspiring to send us up here when they could just vaporise us with their ray guns? The word paranoia got Sandra's attention, and she immediately joined the conversation. Maybe not those aliens, Pa, but shape-shifting archons would have no problem with conspiration. You know, sending us here in the middle of an alien invasion would be a perfect move for them. With us out of the way, they could just sit back and watch the destruction of humanity. After all, it's something they've been trying to do for centuries, and now it's happening. Provided nobody gets in the way. Sandra reached the van first. One window and all the doors were open. Pa threw an angry glance towards Martina and Kevin. Fuck's sake, lads. Which one of you left the van open? Martina rolled her eyes. How would you relax, Pa? Who's going to be robbing you up here? What are aliens going to want with a pile of manky jackets? Sandra began climbing into the back of the van and stopped. She had not finished describing her theory about archons. She turned back to face Martina and Pa and continued explaining. Saving the world could wait. The problem with archons is that anybody you meet could be one. Now, I'm not saying there were definitely some at the party, but, you know, it'd be a good place to blend in. The shape of a hand reached out from the back of the van towards Sandra as she spoke. Martina was the first to notice. Although she could recognise it as a hand, it was like nothing she'd seen before. The surface of it was covered in sleek and black scales. The scales looked like polished carbon. Now, Pa was a close second, but really it should have been up to Martina to give the warning. She couldn't. An icy fear gripped her as she saw two glowing red pupils and the spindly frame of a creature emerge from behind Sandra. The fear paralysed her. The eyes seemed to both swallow and emit light. But the eyes were not what had terrified her. That was the hand that was now slowly reaching towards her friend. Martina could make out Pa from the corner of her eye. He was also pale and frozen. Kevin was third to see the creature. "Sandra, watch out behind you!" Sandra didn't acknowledge the warning. She just snapped around to face the van and raised her left arm. The creature's red eyes followed her movement. It was too late. Sandra's right arm had already shot upwards. Her fist came to a sudden stop beneath the creature's jawbone. The red pupils dimmed, and then the creature's body wobbled and collapsed into the van. Sandra shook her head in disgust. "Fucking hell, Martina, you could have warned me. I'd be the first to let you know if there was an alien sneaking up on you." Pa and Martina stayed frozen with fear. Kevin glanced around the room and sprang into hyperactive, panicked action. "Lads, move. Where there's one, there's many. We need to get the fuck out of here before the others bring in artillery." He ran to the back of the van, cursed, ran to the front of the van, cursed again, and returned to the back of the van. "Sandra, you hop in the van." Sandra was already inside. Kevin slammed the back door shut. He then turned his attention to unfreezing Pa and Martina. "Fucking move, you pair of muppets. We're under attack from aliens and you're standing around like it's a bus queue." He then paused and decided on shouting something more encouraging at them. "If those aliens get a heavy weapon set up, they'll explode us out to space through the giant window." It was enough to infect Pa and Martina with the panic. They both jumped into the cab of the van and Kevin climbed into the driver's seat next to them. He then turned the ignition. Nothing happened. He looked down at the Mega Drive and cleared his throat. "Hello. Greetings, computer. Can you hear me? Set coordinates to County Sligo and, when you're done, engage the hyperdrive." Nothing happened. "Do it now." Pa glanced over to Martina and then to Kevin. "Which one of us are you yelling at, Kev?" "I'm talking to the Mega Drive. Tony and Paul said it's self-aware." "Hurry up," shouted a muffled voice from behind. "We're trying. The van's not working." "Hear this, computer. Activate emergency override. Engage." Pa placed a hand on Kevin's shoulder. "Calm down, Kev. You're freaking out. The van doesn't talk." "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin," came an electronic voice from underneath the dashboard. "What the fuck is going on, lads?" "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin," repeated the voice from the dashboard. "The van's speaking Japanese, Martina." "I can hear that, but why?" "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin." Kevin scratched his head and turned on the indicators. "Oh, lads, do ye speak Japanese?" Pa and Martina stared at him blankly. He reached behind and knocked on a partition. "Sandra, do you speak Japanese?" "What?" "No, hurry up." "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin." Martina looked down at the gear stick. "What about putting the van in reverse?" Kevin bit his lip in frustration. "Don't be stupid, Martina. This is the world's first superluminal hyperdrive. You don't just stick it in reverse." "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin." "Well, just fucking do something, Kev." Kevin put the gearbox into reverse and turned the key. Clump. The van was instantly transported to a hilltop in Sligo. It was now very early into a July morning. The dawn chorus of birds had begun, and everything was peaceful. Apart from a mesh of heat trails in the sky, it looked like any other summer daybreak. "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin." "What's going on? Did we make it?" came a muffled voice. Martina turned around. "Yeah, are you okay, Sandra?" "Bleep. Guys in Shemazin." "I'll go back here. What do you want me to do with this creature?"
Throw some jackets over it. We can sort it out later. You might as well get some kip. We're going to spin up to Jerry McLaughlin. Beep, guys in Chemason. Will you turn that fucking thing off, Kev? And how am I going to do that? It took 2 specialists to set it up, Martina. It's a superluminal hyperdrive. You can't just plug these things in and out like a toaster. Bleep, guys in Chemason. Pa held up a cable he had just pulled from the van's cigarette lighter. Turns out you can. I don't mind doing the driving if you two want to get some kip. Not long after the Zardonian invasion of planet Earth began, an automated superluminal signal set out on a journey through space. Within it was the following message. Flagship attacked. Enemy on board. Defense crew captured. Chapter 11. The sun was up by the time the van pulled up outside Jerry McLaughlin's house, but there was still a light on in the living room. Jerry was visible from the road. He was asleep on a chair in front of his computer screen. Martina, Pa and Sandra walked to the front door. Kevin followed, but at a distance. It took them several loud knocks to stir Jerry. He stood up, staggered to the door, and stared bleary-eyed at the group. Oh, lads, what are you all doing at my house? What time is it? Pa was first to talk. I don't know the time, Jerry, but we need your help badly. We built that spaceship and flew it on board the alien mothership. But the thing's a fucking maze. Would you give us a hand finding the controls? Martina nodded in agreement. Yeah, sorry to be bothering you again, Jerry, but we'll never find them without your help. Jerry squinted to make out who else was in front of him, scratched his head, and stood back. Come in, lads. I'm going to need a few minutes to wake up. Pa, Martina and Sandra walked through the narrow hall and into the living room beside it. Kevin was the last to enter. Jerry waited at the door and stepped into his path. Kevin cursed under his breath. Jerry leaned forward silently until their foreheads were only inches apart. Prick, he said. Kevin responded by venting the word gobshite and spitting into the hall. He waited for a response. Jerry racked his brain for a comeback. His sleep-deprived vocabulary was just not up to the job. Kevin eventually gave up waiting and barged past. Prick, said Jerry a second time, but Kevin was already in the living room. Pa and Martina sat in the 2 armchairs while Sandra kept guard at the window and Kevin lurked in a corner near the door. Jerry walked in and sat down in front of his computer. Right, what's all this about the spaceship? Martina did her best to explain without Sandra interrupting. Jerry typed on his computer as she spoke. When she finished her story, he sat back from the keyboard. Right, lads, it all seems fairly straightforward, but there's one thing I can't figure out. How did she have the space to bring back an alien if the van was full on the way up? Are you missing anyone? Pa looked at the others and shrugged. No, I don't think so, Jerry. He looked at the others again. Oh, wait, shit, where's Fat? Martina jumped out of her chair. Jesus, we left him up on the ship. Fuck. And Billy has my stereo. Jerry shook his head slowly and dropped it into his hands. Ah, lads. The room fell quiet. Jerry eventually broke the silence. Right, we still have a chance to save humanity. And if we're going to take it, we need a proper plan this time. But first things first, we need to see if that creature you kidnapped is still alive. Kevin snorted and rolled his eyes. Fuck the alien. What good's that going to do? Well, if it's alive, it just might be able to give us an idea of what we're up against, replied Jerry sarcastically. Good thinking, Jerry. Myself and Kev will drag it in here. Martina, can you try find something to wake it up with? Pa and Kevin walked out into the hall. Martina followed them to the front door. What the hell is going to wake up an alien, Pa? I don't know. Ask Sandra. Oh, or see if Jerry has any Dutch gold left. The future of life on Earth is depending on it. Jerry McLaughlin doesn't have neighbours. If he did,
they would have a higher than average chance of seeing two men drag an unconscious extraterrestrial from out the back of a Ford Transit and into his sitting room. I'll say one thing for that creature, it's nothing if not ugly. Jerry regarded the creature carefully and looked back at Pa. I doubt it'd speak too highly of you either. Was it heavy? No, light for the size of it. And it seems to be still breathing. The creature was now in a crumpled heap next to a pile of circuit boards and a broken superstar heater. Sandra hadn't moved from her vigil by the window next to it and was still gazing up at the sky. Martina sat back down in one of the armchairs and began rolling a joint. Pa slouched into the other. Kevin was doing a good job of looking surly and an average job of lurking by the door. He carefully ignored Jerry, who was typing on his computer again. Lads, I'm just going to see if there's a diagram of that mothership on the internet. Let me know if the alien wakes up. The faded red glow of the alien's eyes flickered on and off, but there was no other sign of life. This reminds me of the time Trevor Staunton's head went massive. What the fuck are you on about, Pa? Muttered Kevin. Was he picked up in a spaceship with his two eyes glowing red? No, he wasn't. But his head was about the same size as that creature's is now, and he was passed out most of the time too. Martina put down the tobacco and glanced over to Pa. When was that? A few years ago, before you met him. His head just swelled up until he was too top-heavy to balance himself. He ended up out of work for months. He had to go for a cure to sort it. Up in the hospital? No, some woman near Killarney had it. Kevin rolled his eyes. Ha! Some woman near Killarney? Are you saying Trevor went to the doctor and was told, sorry son, your head's just gone massive and there's nothing medicine can do. That'll be 20 quid. Pa continued, impervious to the sarcasm. Yeah, apparently it happens. Not very often though. I wonder would a cure work on the alien? No, interrupted Sandra. Gaia does not heal life from outside her system, she added with a tone of certainty. Yes! Merlin's online! Who's doing what, Jerry? Oh, the Merlin of Chronos is online. That lad wrote a book about Klingon spacecraft. Jerry, I haven't a fucking clue what any of that means. Do we know where the control room is now? We will shortly. I just need to fill the Merlin in on some details. Can you describe the part of the mothership you were in, Pa? We landed in a big room with a window, with little black robots moving around. And then we went into a big corridor, and there was a pile of empty rooms off it. And that's it, really. Is that fella's name really the Merlin of Chronos? No, it's Barry McNally, but he likes to be called the Merlin. Can you give me a bit more detail? What size was the window? Huge. Hey, this Merlin fella sounds like a bit of a float, Jerry. Gar, that ch-ch. The noise was something like the noise the sea makes as it drags heavy boulders along the shore. It had come from the creature, whose red eyes were now glowing brightly. Jerry! Yeah? The alien's awake. The creature sat up and carefully scanned the room with its red eyes. Every other set of eyes in the room stared back, except Sandra's, who was still looking out of the window. What did it just say, lads? Pa stood up to get a closer look. I don't know, nothing I've ever heard before. Maybe it's hungry. We could fetch it something to eat. Kevin rolled his eyes for a second time. Oh, grand soul, Martina. Why don't we just make it a jam sandwich while its mates destroy the world? It was just a suggestion. Sandra kept her back to the room and spoke slowly. There is the third prophecy of Hybobolus Clune. She paused, waited for a response, and then continued without one. He predicted that Earth would be invaded from space at the end of the 20th century. Jerry ignored Sandra's contribution and joined in the conversation. Good idea, Martina. That creature won't give away much information if it thinks we're going to kill it. Maybe it's thirsty. Oh, okay, I'll try it with a drink. Hybobolus who, Sandra? Hybobolus Clune. He was a 12th century monk who prophesied World War I and the first time travel journey. And something a lot like what's happening now. Martina pulled open the ring pull from a can of Dutch Gold. Mind drinking from it, and placed the can in front of the alien. A scaly hand shot forward, grabbed the can, and its contents disappeared into the alien's mouth. "You're right, Jerry. That thing was thirsty." She opened a second can, and then a third. They were both downed instantly. "Lads, stop giving beer to the alien." Jerry's eyes moved to the computer screen as he spoke. "It's an awful waste." "Garta ch-ch." Sandra turned around to face her friends and continued. "Hybobolus proved that the universe is made up of form and chaos, and that every time there is too much form, it reverts to chaos. You can be sure that those aliens travelled here in an abundance of form." "Fuck this, we're wasting time." Kevin's less than impressive patience had reached its limit. "First a hyperdrive that only speaks Japanese, and now an extraterrestrial that barks gobbledygook. Come on, let's just go back to the ship. We can at least do a hostage swap for fat." "And Billy," added Martina. "Leave him there. That fella's a space cadet anyway." "That's not for you to decide, Kev. Besides, I want my stereo back." "Lads!" Jerry looked up from the computer and over at Martina and Pa. "Tell me again how you set the coordinates for the trip to the mothership." "We didn't. Kev's friends did it." "Where are they now?" "Kev, do you know where Paul and Tony went to?" "Do you want to get breakfast?" "What, in the middle of everything?" "I suppose so, Martina. They've been working all night trying to get things ready while you were off Dawson." "Bit strange, don't you think?" "Bit strange going to get breakfast? And feeding beer to an alien in Jerry McLaughlin's living room is normal, is it, Martina?" "Relax, Kev. It just seemed odd that the pair of lads that are big into spaceships would suddenly wander off before it was even launched." Jerry sat up and clapped his hands. "Got it. The Merlin of Chronos has just posted online, and the Merlin reckons any command centre has to be at the opposite end of the ship to the hangar. He says they wouldn't have the fuel and ammo near the centre of operations." "Oh, okay. Makes sense. How do we get there then?" "What size were those corridors, Pa?" "Big." "Big enough to fit your transit?" "I suppose." "Good. We can drive there. But getting to the control room is only going to be half the battle. Key to this will be making sure we put the mothership out of action." Jerry turned away from the screen and looked around at everyone except the creature. His red eyes were now forlornly gazing at a fourth can of Dutch Gold. Jerry cleared his throat. "Listen, I figured out how to save the world." Martina glanced over at Kevin before being the first to reply. "That's the second time in the night I've heard someone say that." Pa nodded in agreement. "Yeah, and the last time involved building a spaceship. Will this new plan be much different? I'm getting really tired." "No, not really. I just need to add some code to the Mega Drive so we can run the input sensors into an infinite loop, clone the drive, and upload it to the alien system." The room went silent. "Let me explain," continued Jerry. "Their spaceship is big, so it'll have a crazy number of sensors. If we change the code to report when nothing is happening, then it'll overload their system." The room went silent again. Think of it like a smoke alarm that sounds whenever it doesn't sense smoke. Only there's several million of them going all at once." Nobody replied. We're going to make the mothership paranoid." "Couldn't we just break stuff and be done with it?" "No, it's not that simple. That thing has brought an invasion force across millions of light years. It just won't break if you hit it a kick." "You speak Japanese, Jerry?" "No, Martina. And what's that got to do with it?" "It's just, you said you were going to do something with the Mega Drive. It turns out it only speaks Japanese." "Huh?" "Yep. Your Mega Drive communicates in Japanese. And you should have warned us, Jerry," said Kevin loudly. "We were nearly all killed because of it." "Did you not set the language at the start?" No, we didn't. Are you supposed to?" The room went silent for a fourth time. Jerry stood up and looked out the window towards the Ford Transit parked beside the road. "Lads, leave the computer stuff to me. One thing is certain. The next time you land up on that ship, there'll be no messing." He glanced over at the alien. "Here, big head, if you're listening. When we get there, you can tell your buddies that these humans won't be going quietly into the night." It was difficult to tell if the alien had heard Jerry. The creature looked to be lost in thought. There again, it could have been just wearing a normal expression for an alien. In any case, nobody in the room seemed to care. And that was it for the morning of July the 4th, 1996. A plan, a weapon, a means of delivery, and a van load of trouble for any Zardonians standing in their way. Chapter 12. Heat trails scarred the sky as Kevin, Pa, Martina, Jerry, Sandra, an unconscious alien, and a self-aware Mega Drive rolled along the main road that led towards Corran Hill. Bleep. Enemy patrol dead ahead. The Mega Drive was now speaking in a language that they could all understand and ignore. Jerry, Sandra, and a drunken alien were in the back of the van. Jerry sat in silence. Sandra talked all the way. The alien, at least in all outward appearance, had fallen asleep. Kevin, Pa, the Mega Drive, and Martina were in the front of the van. Bleep. We are in range of the photon rays. The van turned onto a narrow boreen. Bleep. One direct hit and we will be destroyed. Pa was driving and focused on the road. Kevin and Martina were quietly thinking of the mission ahead. Had it been earlier in the night/morning, they might have been paying more attention to the sky. Bleep. Enemy fighter in close approach. Either side of the road was peaceful. The creatures that inhabited the hedges lining the route were enjoying a day like any other. The van approached an area of forestry. Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta, 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 zing! Shots tore through the hedge and dug smoky holes in the road. Whatever delivered them came quickly from above. Its black outline swooped and arced in the distance, preparing to swoop again. Pa gripped the wheel as the van bounced over the newly broken tar. The trees in the forestry were tall, wide, and let very little light through. Pa accelerated towards him as hard as the van could go. Bleep. The enemy fighter is targeting us, noted the Mega Drive. Bleep. We cannot withstand its weapons, reminded the Mega Drive. Bleep. You will all die, suggested the Mega Drive. Terup. A section of the earth beside the van evaporated into a white flash. Had the missile been on target, it would have been the end of the mission, but it wasn't, and Pa turned the van into the cover of forestry. He stopped the van and scanned the sky. Whatever had just attacked them was no longer visible. Pa, Martina, and Kevin listened carefully and heard nothing. What just happened? We were shot at by one of the alien fighters, Jerry, but we're in tree cover now, and there's no sign of them coming back. Are you okay? Yeah, fine. At least if the alien fighters are busy down here, we get a clean run on the mothership. Keep moving, Pa. That's the plan. It'll probably be another 5 minutes to the launch strip. Bleep. The enemy will have strengthened their defences, warned the Mega Drive. Bleep. The mission cannot succeed, reasoned the Mega Drive, to nobody and everybody in particular. Pa paused before starting the van again. Whose turn is it to skin up? I did it last time, replied Martina. Well, I'm driving. Kev, would you get one together? We might get a chance on the mothership. Yeah, fine. Actually, I think I've one on my shoe. Kev, would you just roll a fresh one? Why? Are you saying my feet smell, Pa? Yeah, sometimes, a little. Well, that's news to me. How come nobody else has a problem with them? Pa started the van and pretended his full concentration was elsewhere. Sorry, Kev, I'm trying to watch the road and we didn't say we had a problem with them smelling. Hold on, Pa. It's you that said Kev's feet smell. Leave me out of this. I don't hear you saying you were keen to smoke his toe juice spliff, Martina. That's not the same as saying Kev has smelly feet. Kev looked down at his feet, shrugged, and began rolling the joint. Lads, if you're smelling anything, it's not my feet. I've been wearing the same pair of socks for weeks, and there's not even a hint of mould on them. He had just finished sealing the papers when the van came to an abrupt stop. It was now at the end of the forestry trail, and meters from the runway, Kevin, Martina and Pa sat in silence, peering out onto the clearing. Jerry climbed out of the back and walked around to the open driver's side window. "Why have you stopped?" "There's something out on the clearing. We just want to be sure it's not an alien fighter." "Right, you stay here, I'll take a look." Everyone except the alien piled out onto the trail to watch Jerry make his way onto the runway. He was back in less than a minute. "We're okay. It's not the aliens. It's just two crusties in an Opel Astra." "What do they look like?" asked Martina. I don't know. One has dreads. Just look like a pair of hippies to me." Martina shook her head. "Now, do you see what I mean about Tony and Paul? I'd lay money that's them again. This is all just too much of a coincidence." "What are you saying, Martina?" asked Pa. "I'm saying there's a good chance that they're here to make sure we don't stop the invasion." Sandra pushed past Jerry and stepped out into the clearing. "What do you mean by that? Do you think they're a pair of Archons, Martina?" "Well, I don't know who they are, but it's just not right that they keep turning up." Sandra motioned for everyone to stay put and began walking towards the runway. "Okay, these creatures can be tricky," she shouted. "The rest of you, get back in the van. I'll take care of these two while you take off." Nobody argued with her. There was never any point. "Good luck, Sandra," shouted Pa. "There's no such thing as luck. It's just something plastic manufacturers made up to sell coloured lighters." Sandra stopped in the middle of the clearing. This placed her between the van and the Astra. Jerry climbed into the back of the van and shut the door. Kevin took the driving seat while Pa and Martina got in beside him. He drove out of the trail and up towards the end of the runway. One of the men in the Astra was waving furiously at them. It was Tony. "Wait!" he shouted. "Don't do what he says," a voice yelled Sandra, before explaining that was exactly what an Archon would say. Kevin didn't. He turned the van to face the runway and switched off the engine. "Is everyone ready? Take off in X-3. He switched on the superluminal hyperdrive. X-2. Kevin turned the ignition. Clump. The van and its crew were instantly transported onto the launch deck of the most formidable fighting spaceship the universe has ever known. "Bleep. It's a good job I'm not paranoid, because every sensor on this spaceship is monitoring me," noted the Mega Drive. Jerry was first out of the van. "Right, lads. Now we split up. Martina, you and Kevin go find Faf and Billy." Glanced over at Pa. "We'll take the van, find the control room and save the human race. Everyone meet up back here in 20 minutes. In May of 1243, a Belgian monk named Hybobolus Clune made an announcement. He declared that the most precious thing in the universe is a way of life. For Sardonians, fighting is their way of life, a thing they love dearly. Chapter 13. "Martina, not down that way, down this way, follow me." "Kev, you're going to end up getting us lost again." The mission to rescue Billy and Faf did not begin well. For Martina, it involved following Kevin as he darted about randomly opening doors on a spaceship. For Kevin, it involved getting lost and pretending he wasn't. They were some way along a large white corridor that led away from the landing deck. Kevin was insisting to make a 180-degree turn for the third time in a row. He stopped suddenly and scratched his chin. "Martina, we need to get hold of some weapons before we go any further. I'm pretty sure there'll be an armory near the launch deck." Kev, can we just concentrate on finding Faf and Billy like Jerry told us?" "Nobody tells me what to do. I do whatever I want." Martina bit her lip. "Fine, whatever you say, Kev. In that case, can you just concentrate on doing the thing that you want to do that Jerry asked you to do?" Before Kevin could reply, a wave of noise rattled from somewhere in the distance. Clank, darong, clank. "Martina, you know well it'd be impossible for me to want to do anything that came out of that fella's head," And I tell you why. Because he's a dickhead. Jesus, whisht, will ya? That noise came from where we landed. The alien fighters must be back. You see? What did I tell you, Martina? We should have got hold of some weapons when we had the chance. Take it easy, Kev. They don't know we're here yet. Crack! The corridor echoed with the sound of footsteps, heavy and fast. Kevin and Martina looked around for somewhere to hide. Before they could move, the spaceship rumbled and was plunged into darkness. Martina, have you still got the lighter with you? I can't see a thing. Shh, will you? They'll hear us. Typical. I bet those fuckers can see in the dark. Will you just shut up, Kev? What happened next happened very quickly. For Martina and Kevin, it involved pain. For the Zardonians, it involved attempting to contain two intruders. Kevin found himself forced onto the ground. It was pitch black, but he connected with two hard punches while on his back. This bought him enough time to run. Now, the problem with running at full pelt in the dark is that when you eventually meet an object, there's never any warning. The walls suffered little or no damage, but Kevin was left unconscious. When Kevin eventually woke up, it was at the end of a large room. The lights were back on and he was alone. The room was filled with carefully stacked crates. He opened one. It was loaded with weapons. Despite the urgency of his situation, Kevin lost himself to a moment of profound reflection. It was a realization that he could have easily cleared zero tolerance, but fate and the game's time limit had stepped in. A realization that his purpose in life went far beyond sub-basement level 57. This was his destiny. Only he didn't believe in destiny. What he believed in was his ability to take the weapons from the box and use them to clear every level of the mothership. Martina, meanwhile, had absorbed several heavy blows before being lifted, carried, and thrown into a featureless room. The lights had come back on. She had expected torture, but the Zardonians had left. Only 50% of their mission was complete. Martina's hands shook as she began sticking cigarette papers together. So much for friendship, she muttered. She placed a line of buds into the papers. I hope to catch you and batter you, Kev, she yelled. Martina rolled the papers together and lit the joint. Can anyone hear me? She took a long drag and scanned the metal walls enclosing the room. If anyone's listening, think I'm going to need a tin opener to get out. Smoke drifted across the room. Martina! Is that you in there? Faf? I knew I could smell grass. Thank God it's you. Where the fuck did you get to? I've been looking for you for ages. Faf, I'm trapped. Can you see a way in? A door opened in one of the walls and Faf appeared in it. How'd you manage to get yourself stuck in here? Faf stopped and stared when he saw Martina. She'd earned cuts and bruises from her time with the Zardonian defence squad. She had also gained a wide-eyed expression of terror. Jesus, what happened to you? Are you okay? I don't know, Faf. I think I'm okay. Me and Kev were attacked by the aliens. I think Kev escaped. Or ran away. And Pa and Jerry went off to find the control room. They took the van with them. And there's an alien in the back of it. And Sandra's off fighting Arcanons up in Cornhill. And one of my feet is very sore. And I think the human race is done for. Fucking hell, that's a busy morning. Did you spot a toilet? No, I don't think so. Have you been looking for one all this time? Well, sort of. I couldn't find one and had to give up. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Sure, it's the alien's own fault for not putting signs up. Jerry who? Oh, Jerry McLaughlin. He's helping us now. He's going to make the spaceship paranoid. Jerry McLaughlin? The lad who cleared zero tolerance? Yeah, him. Listen, Faf, we should get moving. The aliens can come back at any minute. All right, so. Wait a minute. Why is Jerry McLaughlin going to make the spaceship paranoid? Oh, I'm not sure. He reckons it'll stop the aliens destroying Earth. I'm sure he knows what he's up to. Come on, we need to go. Have you seen Belly? Billy who? For fuck's sake, Faf. Billy the Rant. You travelled into outer space with him. Oh, Billy, yeah. No. I thought he was with G. The sound of an alarm blasted through the ship. It was followed by footsteps echoing towards them. They must be coming back. We need to go. Martina was on her feet and outside the room faster than she said the words. Faf followed her. They were barely out of sight of the room when Martina grabbed Faf and dived into another one. It was a good move. Dozens of armed aliens clattered by outside. Where do you reckon they're all going? Shh! Shushed Martina. Wherever they're off to, it's not somewhere I'd like to be. Will you just shut up? Faf couldn't stay silent for long. I think we should probably wait here for a while. He paused for Martina to agree, and when she didn't answer, he answered himself. Yep, that's the best move. Things sound hectic out there, and the landing deck could be miles away. Here is a lot closer. Closer to what, Faf? I don't know, to where we are, I suppose. Martina snuck a look out the door to make sure there was nothing there, and turned back angrily. What is wrong with you? An army of aliens just ran by, and you're in here rapping shite talk. You might as well run out to the corridor and invite them in for a chat. It's pure chance that we're still alive. Martina, are you okay? You sound stressed. Of course I'm not fucking okay. I'm stuck on a spaceship with you. And an army of aliens. And Barley Farnan has been vaporised. And Billy the Rat went off in my stereo. Fast shook his head. Martina, you're freaking out. Give me the White Widow. I might as well skin up. We could be here for a while. Martina handed Faf the materials, and he began rolling the joint. Rup! An explosion echoed throughout the ship. Faf lit the joint and handed it to Martina, who took a drag and slumped down against the wall facing the door. They sat quietly smoking. The machinery rumbled somewhere below and was followed by more explosions. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat! Rup! The sounds were loud, but distant. Wait a minute, said Faf suddenly. What time's it? About 10:30, I think. It's hard to tell up here, isn't it? Shit, fuck it. What's wrong? I'm going to miss Magnum PI. Martina coughed. Jesus, you loaded that joint, Faf. Fair play. You know what? Come to think of it, this place reminds me of the episode when Magnum gets shot. Were there aliens in it? No, but he was trapped in a big warehouse and thought he was dead. Martina began rolling another joint. You do know Magnum PI is not real. Anyway, I don't get it. How does that remind you of this? Just, he couldn't get back to Earth either. Martina stopped what she was doing and stared directly at Faf. What exactly are you saying to me? Do you think we're dead? No, I don't. Well, maybe a little bit. It's a bit strange. What is? This spaceship. Martina continued rolling as Faf spoke. I mean, if you think about it, it's a lot like what happened to Magnum. For example, there's no toilet. Martina lit the joint, took a quick drag, and passed it on. It's an alien spaceship, Faf, on a mission to destroy Earth. They probably didn't figure they'd need to provide one. You might be right. Still and all, it's a bit suspicious. Whoosh! I hear something. A dull thud echoed from below. It was followed by another, and then another. The noise was distant, but the whole room shook each time it sounded. Martina crept towards the door. What are those creatures up to now? They're either building something, or else that sound is a weapon. Maybe they're building a weapon. Not that noise. I'm sure I heard a van. Faf and Martina listened for several long minutes. The ship's alarms were punctuated with the distant sound of weapons fire. Every now and then heavy footsteps clattered past outside, but there was no van. Martina was first to break from the vigilance. So what happened to Magnum, Faf? How did he get out of the warehouse? He visited his friends in a dream and then came back to life. At least he must have. He was grand at the start of the next episode. Sure, that's no use to us. Wait, I can hear it again. Ah, Martina, you must be hallucinating. There's nothing familiar to be heard in that racket. Not unless you go and convince yourself there is. Pfaff handed the end of the joint to Martina. Come to think of it, that could have been what happened to Magnum. Martina finished the joint and stubbed it out on the floor. I don't think we're going to make it back. Maybe it wasn't a dream at all. Magnum had just lost so much blood that his mind was playing tricks. You know what? Magnum must have been rescued by his mates, only they didn't have time to show it on the telly. Martina rolled her eyes. For fuck's sake, Pfaff. You're talking about this fella like he's a personal friend. His shenanigans don't make one bit of difference to our situation. Will you just shut the fuck up? The room, and everything outside of it, went briefly quiet. Sorry, I didn't mean to snap at you. This whole thing is freaking me out. It's fine, Martina. If you're not allowed to throw the head when aliens are trying to destroy Earth, when are you? Thanks, Pfaff. It's just that earlier on I thought it was fate that I was able to warn you about the invasion. And well, Kevin's plan seemed to be working. But now I'm not so sure. The distant thuds became a steady rhythm, and the ship rattled with every pulse. Martina made her way back over to the door. Pfaff, she said, if you could live your life again, would you have chosen a different way? A different story? Have you any regrets? I wish I'd brought a camera. The view from out the window of the landing deck was pure class. No, I don't mean just this evening. I mean over your whole life. Grang, trung, grack. What was that? That doesn't sound like the aliens. They listened carefully. Hidden amongst all the background noise was the sound of a car horn. Following it came the crunch of metal scraping metal. Sklang! Is it getting nearer or farther away, Pfaff? It sounds like it's turning around to me. The turning around involved more loud crunches. They were followed by the sound of Jerry McLaughlin. He was complaining loudly about bad driving. Come on, Pfaff, that's the lads. We need to move. Hiding in here won't save the world. Or ourselves. Crewman T631 woke up surrounded by enemies. He expected to be tortured. Instead, he got given a drink. It was unlike anything he had ever tasted before, and in a good way. Just as things looked to be going well, he was bundled into a vehicle. Crewman T631 had an urgent thought before falling asleep. For an unknown reason, it now seemed vitally important to let the Zardonian commanders know about the low opinion he held of them. Chapter 14. At exactly the same time as Kevin and Martina got themselves lost looking for Billy and Pfaff, the second human defence team of Pa, Jerry and an unconscious alien were within spitting distance of the command centre. Stick on Atlantic 252. Can't. The radio's broken. What do you want to listen to that shite for anyway? It'd be better than listening to you mashing the gears. I'd swim to New York quicker. Finding the command centre had been easy. Turning the van when they got there was different. Pa was now well on the way to creating a Ford Transit-sized hole into the room. The delay getting into the controls was proving too much for Jerry. Why didn't you let me out now? I'll take the Mega Drive and try find route access. You can join me whenever you get the van turned. Hang on a second, Jerry. I nearly have it. You said that 5 minutes ago. No way was that 5 minutes ago. Come on, just wait for me. It'll be ages before I get to watch someone destroy an alien warship again. Crunch. Jerry winced as another strip of metal was torn from the superstructure. The van was now wedged diagonally across the corridor that led to the control room. You'll have it half destroyed yourself before we even get near the controls. It's a tight space. What are you on about? You could land a fucking space shuttle in here. Just leave the van. We can sort it out when we're finished. Pa got out. Jerry unplugged the Mega Drive and followed him. They walked through the entrance to a large domed room. The dome itself was transparent and had the ability to magnify light from outside the ship. The entrance looked like the aperture to a camera. Large metal panels took the place of the blades. At least they would have done on a good day. Thanks to Pa's driving, 3 of the panels had been knocked out and had now found a new home on the otherwise spotless floor. Jerry and Pa stepped over the misplaced panels and into the magnified starlight. A 3-dimensional display of the solar system took up the centre of the room, while the walls were lined with glowing panels. If it was not for the strong smell of shite, the strangeness of the scene would have been overwhelming. As it was, Pa could not manage much more than staring wide-eyed around him. Fucking hell, that hologram is deadly. I wish I'd brought a camera. Jerry had begun yanking at the glowing panels. He was not hanging around and spoke as he worked. Not sure a picture would come out great in here, Pa. You'd need a flash. It'd probably be all blurry. You mean like a UFO photo from the 50s? Yeah, exactly like those UFO pictures from the 50s. That's why nobody bothers photographing alien spaceships anymore. Pa walked a slow lap of the room and stared out of the roof. Jerry was looking in the opposite direction and began rooting around for a gap in the floor. Look at that view. Jerry located a trapdoor beneath the panels, lifted it open, grabbed a fistful of cables and plugged in the Mega Drive. I'm kind of busy right now. I'm sure it's class though. You know something, Jerry? It's true what they say about the stars. What's that then? You got to reach for them. Who said that? I know, probably Rodney Rice. Sounds like bollocks to me. It's just a saying, Jerry. It means us humans should be building more rockets. What are you on about? Will you go on shite? Smells like someone already did. I was wondering about that too. I think it's coming from under the floor. If I didn't know better, I'd say someone has crapped into the signal repeater. Whatever it is, it's playing puck with their systems. What happened next happened without warning. First, the room was violently illuminated. The light from a powerful searchlight above the dome scanned the room. Second, it focused its beam on the 2 intruders. Thirdly, Pa panicked. Run, Jerry, that's the same shape of a thing that attacked us up on Corran Hill. The searchlight was attached to what looked like a giant metallic haddock floating in space. Multicoloured lights flashed hieroglyphic symbols on the splayed fins. Where the eyes should have been was one long rectangular window, tinted gold and hiding whatever was behind it. Pa looked around for somewhere to hide, but there was nowhere obvious. He was briefly torn between inaction and hysteria. He settled on running back and forth while giving his middle finger to the lights above the ceiling. More lights joined in. Jerry, there's fucking loads of them now. The aliens are back. Calm down, Pa. We've still got time. The fighters aren't going to shoot a hole through the hull of their own ship. Why didn't the Mega Drive warn us? The poxy thing wouldn't shut up earlier. Bleep. It would have been pointless, replied the Mega Drive. Bleep. The mission is doomed, it advised. Bleep. Your friends will die first, suggested the Mega Drive. Just as quickly as the lights appeared, they were gone. Jerry had mostly ignored the piercing searchlights. Instead, he had succeeded in ripping a panel from the wall above the trapdoor. He was now busy prodding inside the hole it left. I think I've found route access. Quick, go start the van. We don't want to hang about. Jerry unplugged the Mega Drive. Clank, throng, clank. A series of tremors shook the superstructure, and unseen machinery began to stir into life. Bleep, the aliens have boarded. Crack! The ship went dark. Did you mean for that to happen, Jerry? No, I'm not sure what did that. Maybe the upload has caused an recursion, and that tripped the systems. Oh, okay, so, does that mean the spaceship is paranoid? I don't know. Just go out and start the van, will you? We'll find out soon enough. The magnified starlight from the dome radiated just enough light for Pat to find the van, climb in, and turn on the electrics. The lights of the van pierced the darkness. It was firmly wedged between the 2 walls of the corridor. The driver's side window was facing away from, and the rear door towards, the control room. It took Pa several seconds to realise what he was looking at. He leaned across to the passenger door, opened it, and yelled, Jerry! Yes, Pa. Come out to the van. You're going to need to see this. Roughly 50 metres along from the van was a formation of Zardonian infantry. They had fanned out across the width of the corridor and were crouching behind a line of shields. It was a solid wall of armour and scales. And it was also clear that they meant for nothing to pass that way. Jerry stumbled out the Mega Drive. He got to the passenger door, looked along the glare of the headlights, and stood still. Holy shit, where the fuck did they come from? I've no idea, Jerry. They were there when I turned the lights on. Right, fuck. Well, fuck, shit. He climbed into the van and plugged the Mega Drive into the cigarette lighter. Bleep, you will both die. Why aren't they moving, Jerry? Both men sat staring down the corridor. They probably didn't expect to find a van here. My guess is they were waiting for heavy artillery. What about the lads? I don't know. Fuck it anyway. Here, roll down the window there and tell them we want to do a prisoner swap. I'll wake the alien. Jerry stepped back out of the van. He walked behind it and opened the rear doors. Pa leaned his head out the window. Listen up, we want to do a swap with you. We've one of your lads in the back, and if you want to see him again, you need to let our 2 lads go. Well, it's not 3 of them, Pa, called Jerry, who was struggling out the back of the van with an alien on his shoulder. Pa shouted again. Sorry, I meant our 3 lads. He got no response. Shit. What's up, Jerry? I'm after dropping the alien. Gartachach. I think he's after waking up. The creature staggered to its feet. 2 red eyes stared up at the ceiling, over at the van, and along the corridor. It brushed past Jerry, scrabbled in through the passenger door, and then climbed over Pa, before barreling out the driver's side. Stop him, Pa! They haven't shown us their prisoner yet. I can't, he's gone. The creature lurched down the corridor and came to a stop in front of the line of shields. Gartachach. Jerry climbed back into the cab. What in the name of God is it up to? I don't know, but its mates don't look too happy about it. The alien was now wobbling from side to side. I think it's pissed. Those beers must have gone to its massive head. Gartachach. A gap formed in the line of shields. A weapon emerged and was discharged. The creature's head exploded. Scales and flesh splattered the ceiling and walls. Fucking hell, quick, roll up that window, Pa. The gap in the shields widened to reveal an even larger weapon. Bleep, you are being targeted by a photon cannon. Jerry frantically checked the plug on the Mega Drive. What are you doing, Jerry? You can't be taking and leaving without the others. We've no choice. Put the van into reverse. Bleep, the cannon is charging. Pa slowly put the van into reverse and then hesitated. What the fuck are you waiting for? Turn on the ignition. I can't, Jerry. Not without the lads. Turn it now. It'd be no use to them dead. Jerry dived across the cab and yanked the key. Clump. The van was instantly transported back to Earth and back to the end of a recently extended clearing on the top of Corran Hill. It was daylight, and an Opel Astra was parked next to it. They were both stunned by the contrast, but Jerry didn't let on. He spoke slowly. There was no choice up there. You saw what was before us. There was nothing we could have done. The lads are probably still alive. The aliens will want to know how they got onto the ship, and there'll be years trying to get any information out of Faf. Pa shook his head sadly, before slumping face down on the steering wheel. We can still save them, Pa. Come on, don't give up. Pa didn't look up. I need a smoke, he said. Chapter 15. By mid-morning, the human defence team had divided into roughly 3 groups. Kevin was preparing a single-handed assault on the alien mothership. Faf and Martina were getting stoned in an empty cargo hold, and Jerry, Pa's van, and the Mega Drive were parked on Corran Hill next to 2 crusties. Sandra pulled Jerry out of the van and grabbed him by the elbow. She threw a suspicious glance towards Tony and Paul and leaned in close. I need to chat to you in private. Walk out of earshot of those 2. But don't make it look like you're walking out of earshot. Since returning from space, Pa managed to spend 10 minutes sitting in the van, staring blankly and smoking. In those same minutes, Jerry managed to explain what went wrong to Sandra. Tony and Paul, whose Opel Astra was parked next to the van, had been listening intently. Sandra had been watching them listening.
Look, Jerry, I know you know that that pair are Archons, but they don't know you know that I know, she whispered. Sandra then glanced towards Tony and Paul, and back to Jerry. Listen, keep on acting like you don't know. Just let on you believe those lads work for NASA. She winked and tapped her temple. We need to get hold of their car stereo. Jerry looked confused. Sandra, you're making even less sense than usual. I haven't got time for this bullshit. Well, you need to make time. That has to be a space radio plugged into the Astra, and they've tuned it to the invasion frequency. How else could they have known about the mothership? Huh. So what you're saying is these lads you said were aliens are aliens, but we need to pretend they're astronauts so we can get their stereo to listen for other aliens. Yeah. But won't all the transmissions from the mothership be in, like, Jupiterian or Venusian or something? They will, yeah. I mean, no. Archons are too clever for that. The radio will be translating for them. What? Into Arconian? How the fuck does that help? Keep your voice down, Jerry. They don't know we know they're aliens. The driver's side of the van suddenly swung open. Pa was in a hurry. It's your fault the lads are still up there. You're full of talk, when it counts, you run like fuck. Pa came forward with a huge wing in left hand. Jerry ducked it, and the two men began grappling. Pa managed to hit Jerry with his elbow. Calm down, Pa. It's the aliens we should be fighting. Jerry landed his right knee into Pa's stomach, and the pair separated. Well, how about we get back up there then, instead of you talking shite to these three spacers, gasped Pa, who was trying to pretend he wasn't hurt. The row got the attention of Tony and Paul. Hey, leave it out, lads, yelled Paul. That's right, shouted Tony in agreement. You're at war with the most powerful army in the universe. This is not the time for fighting. Don't believe them, shouted Sandra. It's a trick. Your friends on the mothership need help, continued Paul. Brickering down here is no use to them, especially with what young Kevin has just gotten himself into. This instantly distracted Jerry and Pa from what they'd been doing. What do you mean by that? Snapped Pa. Have you a way of knowing what's going on board? In a way, yes, replied Paul. We've been listening to radio transmissions from the aliens all morning, continued Tony. Bollocks, he heard the aliens on the radio. What station were they on? They have a space radio, Pa, explained Jerry. The aliens aren't on any of the stations. They got a what? They've got an Archon space radio. It translates Jupiterian from the mothership, so they can listen in on what the aliens are saying. An Archon radio? Never heard of them. How much did one of them set you back? I don't know, ask Sandra later. You can price a new stereo once we save the world, Pa, replied Jerry. And after we rescue the lads. Tony, Paul, Pa and Jerry were now standing together in front of the van. Sandra quietly walked away from them and behind the vehicles. She made sure she was not seen. What did you hear in the radio transmissions? Asked Jerry. We heard a lot, replied Tony. Yes, a lot, agreed Paul. Those aliens seem to broadcast everything. Well, it sounds like everything. I don't know about that. I've often listened to aliens broadcasting more. Okay, Tony. Maybe it's not the most transmissions that you've ever heard, continued Paul. But it was still loads. Ha! You just think that because you're younger than me. I wouldn't really call it loads. What are you on about, Tony? A second ago you said you heard a lot. I mean, we heard a lot about what Kevin is up to. I was listening to alien transmissions before you were born, and there used to be a hell of a lot more of them out there. Okay then, if it makes you happy, call it not a small, but not a very big amount, replied Paul. He then turned his back to Tony and faced Jerry and Pa. Like I was saying, the aliens have been sending out regular transmissions from the mothership, probably to let their mates back home know how they're getting on with the invasion. The first one came on the radio just after breakfast saying the mothership had been attacked and the defence crew captured. That transmission sounded automated. Are you sure? I wouldn't have said it was, interrupted Tony. Pretty sure, Tony. It ended with ZB. It's FZB for automatic. Oh, right, I always get them two mixed up. Actually, no, wait, Tony, you're wrong. It's ZB for automatic, because the other messages after that didn't sound automatic, and they all ended with the FZB code. Jerry and Pa looked at each other, and then back at Paul. Will you just fucking tell me what you heard about Kevin? Snapped Jerry. If you take it easy, I'll tell you, continued Paul.
After the message about the mothership being attacked, we heard a pile of transmissions reporting intruders. Anyway, after that then came a signal calling back the fighters to defend the mothership. I'm guessing you know what that was about. Tony looked impatient. Tell the lads what we heard about Kevin. They don't have all day. I was getting to that, replied Paul. They asked me, not you. So how about you let me tell them? Paul shrugged and mimed the word wanker to Jerry and Pa. Anyway, not 1 minute after you arrived came an urgent transmission for all fighters to go to the lower levels of the ship. And that's your friend Kevin, interrupted Tony. The transmissions used an alien word I've never heard before, continued Paul. But as far as I can work out, it means mechanized assault. Yeah, agreed Tony. It's the word for mechanized assault. If you were around as long as me, you'd know that straight off. If I was around as long as you, I'd have learned to shut my gob every now and then, and not to spout bollocks at every turnabout, replied Paul. Sorry lads, where was I? Oh yeah, the aliens must have been talking about your friend Kevin. He was determined to cause mayhem up on the mothership earlier. Tony didn't seem to hear. You know, listening to that transmission reminded me of the first space mission I was ever on. Except back then, we didn't have the benefit of a hyperdrive, he mused. Paul ignored him. Anyway, listen, you now have a chance to get back onto the alien mothership safely. The way I see it, if all the fighters are off to the lower levels, then you have a clean run at the launch bay and the upper sections. Ha! When you think about it, it was amazing we got out alive that time, continued Tony. You know, young Kevin reminds me of me when I was younger. Of course, things were a lot more difficult back then. From what I heard, you didn't cover yourself in glory that first mission of yours, Tony, replied Paul. You must have got a wobble in your brain that time the way you've talked at people about it since. Actually, you know what? I don't give a fuck. Nobody does. Park up the reminiscing. Bullshit anyway. Jerry began making his way back to the van. Tony took a barely noticeable step towards Paul. There's something I've always meant to say to you, he said. Jerry opened the driver's side door of the van. Tony continued talking. And that is that you're a bollocks. Paul didn't reply with words. Instead, he lashed out a kick towards Tony's legs. Tony leapt forward. Paul turned to run, but stumbled. Tony caught up quickly and dumped him onto the ground. Jerry was now halfway into the van. Pa, come on for fuck's sake. You heard what's happening on the ship. We need to go. 1 minute, replied Pa, who had grabbed hold of one of Tony's elbows and was trying to drag him away from Paul. Leave it out, lads, he yelled. The human race is under attack. This is no time to be fighting. Pa, are you gone daft? Shouted Jerry. Just lead them at it. Pa joined Jerry in the cab of the van. Sandra was already inside. She looked pleased. Great work distracting those Archons, she beamed. I got hold of the radio while you were chatting. You did what? Asked Jerry. Don't worry, I swapped it for the one in this van, she explained. Those creatures won't even notice until it's too late. But what about my radio? I've had it years, said Pa. You told me it didn't work, reminded Jerry. It doesn't, but that's not the point. Haven't you just got yourself an Archon space radio out of the swap? You should be happy about it. Take off in X-3. Jerry plugged in the hyperdrive. Oh yeah, I couldn't get the radio to work, noted Sandra. So it's probably the same difference anyway. X-2, called Jerry. He turned the ignition. Clump. The van was once more transported to the middle of a giant room. This time, the room was filled with alien fighter craft, and little else. The ship's lighting was flickering on and off, and alarm sounds were ringing out from every direction. Somewhere below the room came a dull rhythmic thumping. The entire ship shook with each sound. Bleep. A photon cannon is being fired on board, remarked the Mega Drive. Bleep. It is going to destroy the ship's structural integrity, warned the Mega Drive. Bleep. You will all die. Chapter 16. Pa had many excuses for his bad driving. 1, he was very tired. 2, he was panicked. 3, there was so much background noise, he found it difficult to concentrate. 4, he was on board a spaceship in the middle of an interstellar battle. He had 2 companions and a self-aware computer chip to advise him. But it was not enough to stop him consistently gouging lumps out of the ship. Brang! The front wing of the van made contact with the spaceship's superstructure. and neither object won out. Trung, crack! Keep the windows rolled down, lads. Jerry, who was sitting between Sandra and Pa, had been doing his best to ignore the collisions. We can keep tabs on where we are from the sound of the fighting. Sandra had her head out of the passenger window. So where are we now, Jerry? Hard to tell, but anywhere near the noise of the fighting should be near the lower decks. At least if those two crusties were right. Stop! Yelled Sandra suddenly. The van screeched to a halt. I smell weed. Beep the horn, Pa. I'm not sure that's a good idea. We're trying to avoid the aliens. Sniff for yourself. That's White Widow. The lads won't be far. Jerry smiled. She's right. Told you to be fine. And at least that shit you smoke is good for something. Pa let the van roll forward and sounded the horn, but there was no response. Sandra craned her head out of the passenger window. That smell's not as strong now. We must have driven past him. Right, hold on. I'll turn around. Sklang! There was a loud crunch as Pa reversed the van into a wall. Several lengths of metal collapsed to the floor. The van then bounced over them and ploughed into the opposite wall, to an even louder crunch. Jerry winced at the sound. Fucking hell, Pa, leave some of the ship intact, will you? We still haven't found the others. I'm trying to. All the walls are at funny angles. Your eyes must be at funny angles. Just sound the horn again. If the aliens haven't heard us by now, they're not going to. Sandra saw them first. Two figures stumbling out onto the corridor. Jerry gave a loud whistle. Lads! Is that ye? He yelled. Quiet, Jerry. How do we know they're not shapeshifters? Because they're not, Sandra. Over here, lads. Is everyone okay? The two ran towards the van. Faf was grinning. Martina was less happy. Is everyone okay? Jerry repeated as they came nearer. Martina ran around the van and yanked open the driver's side door. It groaned against its hinges with the force. She glared at Pa. Where the fuck did ye get to? She did not wait for a response. Huh? Playing computer games, I bet. You're right, Jerry. That's not a shapeshifter, whispered Sandra. Pa knew better than to answer. Jerry was not as wise. Ah, no, come on. We had an army of aliens to deal with. And we're here now. Martina threw him a brief look and then focused back on Pa. I got a slap in the face from one of those things, you know, and my ankle is twisted, and Kev has gone missing. And where were you? Shite-hawking about with Professor Pac-Man. Faf quietly opened the rear door of the van and climbed inside. There's no need to be like that, Martina. Calm down, interrupted Jerry. Am I talking to you? This whole thing is your fault. You and the other fucking geek. Come on, Martina, said Pa. To be fair, the aliens had a lot to do with it. And Archons have been conspiring against us. Oh, hello, Sandra. I didn't see you there. Sorry, I wasn't giving out to you. That's okay. For a second, I thought you were a shape-shifting Archon. Those creatures are sneaky, but we fooled them. What do you mean? We stole their radio. Only I forgot to take the instructions. Huh? What Sandra means is that we got hold of a space radio. It's been picking up signals from the ship all morning. Yeah, added Pa. And Kev is still alive. Or at least Tony and Paul reckon he is. Don't believe a word from those creatures, warned Sandra. Each of their sentences is a step towards world domination. Terup! The ship shook with the force of the blast. It was followed by a volley of pulses. Another length of metal fell from the ceiling. Bleep! This ship has been terminally damaged, advised the Mega Drive. Bleep! A hull breach has occurred in level 1, reported the Mega Drive. Bleep! Everyone will die, concluded the Mega Drive. The alarm sputtered to a stop. This had the effect of making the distant noises sound more erratic. They were getting louder. We should go, said Pa. We can't just leave Kev to fend for himself. I'll get Kevin, interrupted Jerry. The rest of ye, take the van and go back to the landing bay. No. No more splitting up, Jerry. We stick together from now on. Are you gone mad, Martina? The aliens might be a bit distracted, but they're not going to miss 5 humans in a Ford Transit rattling towards them. Jerry climbed over Pa and jumped out from the van. No, he continued. I'll get Kevin. Ye lot know nothing about space. Well, most of ye. Not you, Sandra. Sandra wasn't listening. She was fiddling with the radio. What are we going to do about Billy? He's got headphones on. How's he meant to get back to Earth? Asked Martina. Stereo music has no effect on superluminal travel. That's all well and good, Jerry. I meant he won't hear us if we go looking for him. We're at war with an alien army. It was his choice to stick on headphones. If he's not up in the landing deck inside a half hour, leave without him. Jerry glanced down the corridor and back to the van. That goes for me and Kevin too. Then he was gone. Martina climbed into the cab. So how did you end up back on the spaceship, Sandra? Oh, I came back with the lads. Do you know, you were a bit harsh there. They just about made it out of the control room. And the alien is dead. Well, I hope it was worth it. Well, was it, Pa? Did you make the ship paranoid? Pa reversed the van free of the wall and accelerated back along the corridor. I've no fucking idea, he said. The journey to the launch deck went quickly. Pa ground through the gears. Martina began rolling the joint. Where are we? Came a voice from the back. Still on the spaceship, Faf, replied Pa. We're back at the landing bay. We're going to wait here for the others. The van came to a stop beside a squadron of alien fighters. Pa, Martina, Sandra and Faf climbed out and gathered beside the cab. Earth was visible through the giant window. It looked peaceful. Can anyone see the Great Wall of China? Asked Faf. Martina stared up at the spaceships. No, you're not able to see it from space. That's just an urban legend. Why would someone start a rumour like that? It's only going to piss people off when they can't see it. People are strange. Tell you what, it'd be good to put these fighters out of action. How do you mean, Martina? Asked Pa. Oh, I don't know, sugar in the petrol tanks or something. I doubt they run on petrol. I can't smell food. Or anything, come to think of it. The only thing I've smelled since we got here is White Widow. I wonder how the aliens keep the place so clean. They have it spotless. Although there was a smell of shit in the control room. I don't know anything about that, muttered Faf. Martina put the finishes and touches to a joint and stared at him. Why would you say that? Just because I don't. We change the subject, lads. Aliens are trying to kill us. Doesn't matter who shit where. If somebody did. And they didn't. There was a low crackle of interference. Be located in most near mopping up operation. 4 sets of eyes swiveled towards the newly installed radio. I thought you said you couldn't get that thing to work, Sandra. I couldn't earlier. It must have just needed retuning after I lifted it out of the Astra. Pa jumped into the van and grabbed hold of the dial. The radio crackled again. Attack force. Go to rejection of enemy promptly. Possibility is high for the purpose of capture. It's not very good at translating the messages. What do you expect? Asked Sandra. It came out of the minds of shape-shifting archons. They may be sneaky and dim-witted, but they're stupid. That's why they want to harvest our brains. Can we talk to the aliens on it? Try it and see. Pa pressed on the dial. Hello, aliens. Can ye hear me? The radio emitted a short burst of static before crackling again. Attention all humans. We will directly cause you to be immovable. We have to respond to that, you cheeky fuckers. Whoever that was, it sounded like abuse. Off you go, so, Pa, said Martina. I can't think of anything to say. Tell him fuck off, suggested Faf. No, something better than that, interrupted Martina. How about what the American president said earlier? Yeah, that was good. Only I've forgotten what it was. Can you remember? Martina jumped into the cab of the van. Here, move over and give me a go. Attention, aliens. We are the humans, and we will not go quietly into the night. She turned around and winked proudly at the others. You will all die, crackled the response. Pa grabbed the radio again. No, we won't, he replied, before turning it off. The group fell silent. Muffled explosions thumped in the distance, rattling the ship with each sound. Martina was the first to speak. Probably better if we leave the radio off for a while. There's enough noise around the place. Thermobaric OSM-118-147-382 knew very little about the universe. The bit that it knew involved a manufacturing plant, a Terra-class starship, and the knowledge that it would be a proud day when it was fired towards the enemies of Zardonia. This is why OSM-118-147-382 was surprised to suddenly find itself hurtling at the hull of a Zardonian spacecraft. OSM-118-147-382 knew better than to ask why. It wasn't supposed to ask why. It was supposed to explode. And it did. Chapter 13. Kevin ran blindly, as fast as he could, which was not very fast at all. He was terrified of accidentally discharging one of the half-dozen weapons he was cradling. Moments earlier, his mind had been occupied with what he thought was a flawless plan. The same plan had worked for Cuchulainn in his one-man fight against the armies of Queen Maeve. It would be simple enough. Force a confrontation in one of the access corridors, and the aliens would have no choice but to fight single file. He would destroy them one by one, and unlike zero tolerance, there would be no time limit. Step 1 of the plan involved moving crates into the corridor to shield behind. Step 2 of the plan involved placing 6 handheld weapons behind the crates, 1 to use and 5 as backup. Step 3 of the plan involved firing off some shots to force a confrontation. Step 3 was where things fell apart. It turns out that alien weapons are hard to aim. What Kevin intended to do was send a volley of shots echoing down the corridor. What he actually did was randomly discharge a series of explosives. Most bounced off the walls and detonated a little further back. It was the one that bounced into the armory to put an end to his plan. Turrup! The ship rattled with the blast. Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta! Turrup! Kevin didn't think. He just moved. Across a large corridor and into a smaller gangway. The chain reaction of explosions that he had set in motion intensified. Alarms sounded and blocked his ability to think. Heavy footsteps clattered all around. They focused his mind. The aliens were coming. Where are you going, mate? Came the voice. It barely registered in Kevin's brain as he careened around another corner. He was concentrating on shuffle running along the hollow passage. His mind turned thoughts. No plan survives contact with the enemy. But there was no contact. I know. I loop around them, take them by surprise. It was on that thought he stopped. The corridor had ended at a hexagonal window. Beyond it was a sea of stars. Fuck it! He gently set the weapons on the ground. Stupid aliens. They haven't a clue how to design a spaceship. He had nowhere left to run. Behind him the ship rattled and groaned as explosions shook the superstructure. Kevin tapped his foot against the floor and looked at the pile of weapons. And that was how he got the idea. One by one, he carefully placed 5 weapons against the window. He lifted a panel on the floor to test the cavity below for size. You okay, mate? The voice made him jump. Fucking hell, Billy! Never sneak up on someone armed with alien weapons. I didn't sneak up. What are you doing? Building a bomb. Billy the Rat gestured back along the corridor. Are you sure there's not enough explosions already? Very sure. When I fire at these weapons, they're going to blow out that window and suck the creatures into space. We're all on the one ship together, yeah? Where's the rest of your mates? Kevin carefully lowered the remaining weapon into the cavity below the floor and climbed into the hole. Get down here if you want to survive the blast. I'm not sure I trust you. Why don't we just go find the others? Because in a few seconds this place is going to blow sky high. You are sky high. No, the acid wore off ages ago. Right now, I'm saving the world. You say so. How about we see what your mates are up to first though, yeah? Billy walked to the window and grabbed an armful of weapons. What the fuck are you at? I'm going to give these back to who they belong to. Are you mental, Billy? Put them where I had them. Kevin scrambles out onto the floor. Billy had turned back up the corridor. I'm going to dump these in a pile, yeah? Half the problem with those aliens is they don't talk to each other. If I leave these out like that, then they'll have no choice but talk. What are you on about, Billy? The aliens won't know whose is whose, so they'll have to chat, yeah? And what's that going to do? Chill them out. Put those fucking things back before you get yourself vaporised. Billy continued along the corridor, swinging the weapons as he walked. All around him alarms sounded. Kevin raised his weapon and pointed it. I can't let you kill yourself, Billy. Bring back the weapons or I'm going to fire. That doesn't make any sense, mate. You're freaking out. Take a look out that window. You know what they say about the stars? Kevin turned to look, momentarily distracted. What's that? He swung back from the view, but Billy was gone. Kevin glanced back at the window again. There was only one weapon leaning against it. Can a single exploding alien rifle generate enough of a blast to blow out a hexagonal porthole in a starship? The question danced inside Kevin's head. He looked at the window. He looked back towards the ship. He looked at the weapon he was holding. And he looked at the window again. The answer was just not obvious. The more he thought about it, the more he realised that there was only one person who could let him know for sure. He also knew for certain that there was no way in hell he would ever ask that smug bastard for advice. Not even if the arrogant prick walked up right now carrying a barometer and a Haynes manual for starships. It would never happen. McLaughlin's probably sitting in the van clapping himself on the back for clearing zero tolerance and telling anyone who listens how deadly he is. The float. Nobody cares about that. I'm saving the world on board an actual starship with actual alien weapons. And I'm not even making a big deal about it. Terup! Another explosion rocked the ship and brought Kevin's thoughts back up to outer space. The clattering footsteps were louder now. He could hear alien voices in between them. They were making the same boulder being dragged ashore sound he'd heard earlier. It was like surf bursting over an unseen reef. He climbed back into the cavity below the floor and slid the panel over him, until only his eyes and the muzzle of the weapon were left exposed. He steadied himself. It's just me, an alien rifle, a bunch of cables, oblivion, and the floor panel now. The footsteps got really close and stopped. The voices that came with them were lower now, more like pebbles than boulders. Those fuckers! They spotted the weapon! Then they went silent. Typical. I bet if Jerry McLaughlin was about to explode an alien weapon out of a hexagonal porthole, those creatures would just stroll on by. Kevin took aim at the weapon next to the window. It's always up to me to do things the hard way. He knew the creatures were close.
Kevin cursed Billy and thanked physics. He cursed Billy for walking away with the best part of his chance to cause an explosion. He thanked physics for making it very difficult for a squad of heavily armed extraterrestrials to sneak along a hollow gangway unnoticed. Then he squeezed the trigger. Trap! The shot missed completely. It bounced off a wall and landed close back to where it came from. Kevin dropped the panel and flattened himself as best he could. The round detonated, and the window was left intact. What happened next was a rare moment of Zardonian incompetence. Even if any of the witnesses had survived, they would have died shortly afterwards, because the punishment for that incompetence would have been death. Rattled by an enemy whose tactics were proving impossible to predict, they all fired at once, in the direction of the explosion, where the rounds found nothing and continued towards the window of dock and hatch L361, and caused it to stop being a window. Every last fighter in the squad was instantly sucked out through the place where the window had been, which may have been for the best. Kevin braced himself, but his brain was giving up. It had never been his intention to lie prone in the service duct of a spaceship. The ship shuddered and creaked as its systems worked to repressurize the deck. Tear up! The alien ammunition continued detonating, but the alarm stopped. And that was when it hit him. It was unmistakable, wafting its way along the duct. The smell of human shite. Where there's shite, there's life. Where there's life, there's hope. Where there's hope, there's a man destroying a starship. Kevin's thoughts hardened into action again. Crawl, move, do. I'm human. I will not go gently into the night. I'll follow the shite. He began moving slowly along the duct. And then after that, I'll save the world. Chapter 18. While Kevin was putting his full energy into destroying an alien starship, 4 of the human defence squad were passing time on the landing deck. Pa and Martina climbed back into the cab of the van, partly because it was easier to roll joints on the dashboard, but mostly because Sandra was describing another theory. Faf didn't seem bothered. Have you ever woken up with a headache? Do you mean after a load of drinks, Sandra, or just any time at all? Any time at all. Yeah, sometimes I suppose. Well, that's because vibrations in your dreams were trying to align with interdimensional beings. A series of explosions boomed in the distance. You see, Hybobolus himself vibrated at the same frequency as interdimensional beings. He did what? He vibrated. His body became a receiver for their insights. It's one of the only times they've contacted humans directly. That sounds like when Barry Davy picked up 2FM at the Strawberry Fair. What do you mean, Faf? His brain just started picking up radio broadcasts. Really? Are you sure? Oh yeah, you should have been there. You would have loved it. He started channeling Larry Gogan's quiz and everything. First we thought he was messing, but then we turned on the radio and sure enough it was exactly the same. Crack. The ship groaned and creaked. Its lights flickered as more explosions rumbled. Well, anyway, the interdimensional beings told Hybobolus that Earth would be attacked by cosmic automatons and it would happen at the end of the 20th century. Oh, Barry didn't say anything like that. I was with him for the whole day. It became known as the third prophecy of Hybobolus Clune. He called it his cosmic revelation. You learn something new every day. I must have seen every episode of the X-Files, and I've never heard of that. Not many people have. Nobody ever really paid much heed to Hybobolus. Probably because the church said he was a nut and kicked him out of the monastery. Crack! The ship groaned and creaked. The lights flickered, and a low rumbling passed underneath the floor. Bleep! Enemy patrol in close approach.
announced the Mega Drive. Bleep! They are on high alert, advised the Mega Drive. Bleep! They will vaporize you all, warned the Mega Drive. Pa stuck his head out of the driver's side window. Lads, do you hear that? We should think about moving. The Mega Drive reckons aliens are heading this direction. The floor rumbled again. Pa and Martina stepped back out of the van. Does anyone know what time it was when Jerry headed off? Martina glanced around her, but there was no response. It has to have been a half hour ago. What do you reckon? There was still no response. Bleep! The enemy are alert to your presence, informed the Mega Drive. Lads, we're going to have to do something. We can't wait here any longer. Where else can we wait? Nowhere. You don't need to be Jerry McLaughlin to figure out the ship is coming apart. Martina looked around the group again. We have a choice to make. Or maybe we don't. We could spin back to Earth right now and hope Jerry did what was needed to save the world that time. You mean make the spaceship paranoid? Yeah, that. Or we could do the right thing and bring himself, Kev, and Billy back with us. Bleep! You cannot match the enemy weaponry, noted the Mega Drive. You know, earlier in the night, I thought it was fate that had me warning you about the invasion. Sandra opened her mouth to speak. In a minute, Sandra, continued Martina. But then I was not so sure. Then I got really, really stoned. And then I thought I was going to die. And now I'm sure again. Bleep! The enemy patrol is getting closer, warned the Mega Drive. We need to go. What I'm saying is, I know what I want to do. But, well, we each need to look at ourselves and our lives, to decide. You're freaking out again, Martina. Bleep! The enemy patrol is getting closer, repeated the Mega Drive. To decide if you want to risk them by going to fetch Kev and Jerry and Billy and my stereo. I thought that's where we were at. Why the fuck else would we be hanging about up here? Bleep. You're being targeted by a photon cannon, advised the Mega Drive. They're here, roared Pa. Get in the van. To a rap. The van was knocked sideways. Pa, Martina and Faf were thrown from their feet. A pulse of white light covered the room, briefly absorbing every other colour. The explosion swallowed 2 short-range fighters and would have vaporised the van had they not been in the way. It was several seconds before the dust settled. From a Zardonian point of view, the van then left the landing bay incredibly quickly. Too quick to mount any kind of response. For Sandra, Pa, Faf and Martina, it seemed to leave incredibly slowly, and in total silence, or at best with a dull ringing in their ears. Sandra was driving. She had hauled Martina and Pa into the cab. Faf was in the back. Bleep! You were heading towards a heavily fortified command centre, warned the Mega Drive. Nobody heard it. Now, Zardonians are known throughout the universe for their fighting prowess. Underpinning this is another ability, one which is less famous, but arguably more important. That is the ability to document, classify, and clarify everything they encounter. Their Zardonian commander could not record what was happening, half because he didn't know, and half because the ship's computer was suffering what appeared to be an electronic nervous breakdown. The only thing he could be certain of was that his crew had all but lost the battle for Earth. He began to consider the possibility of the Zardonian space fleet going without a flagship, and made an announcement. All crew, search the ship. Every human must die. Repeat, every human must die. Kevin crawled quickly. The smell of shite was getting stronger. Fighters were running around above him, but he could hear more static activity too, like a control room. He strained his ears and struggled to believe his luck. The shit was leading him straight to the centre of alien operations. Solo. Undetected. With an alien rifle.
He crawled some more and paused to listen. A single alien command bellowed all around and then repeated itself, making hearing anything else almost impossible. "Shut up, ye cunt!" "Kevin, is that you down there?" came the voice. It belonged to Jerry McLaughlin. "What's it to you if it is?" "Fucking hell, Kevin, I've been looking everywhere for you. We need to go. The lads are waiting for us over on the landing deck." A floor panel slid away above him and light flooded into the crawl space. Jerry McLaughlin's smiling face beamed down. Kevin climbed out onto the floor and carefully lifted the weapon with him. "Fuck off, Jerry. I'm trying to save the world." "I've already done that. Oh, we need to get out of here before this whole place disintegrates." "My arse you did. An army of aliens and a starship says different. Piss off and leave me at it." Jerry took a step backwards and eyed the weapon. "What's your problem, Kevin?" "You. You're my problem, you slimy bastard. Why don't you just go back to pretend aliens on your computer? It's not so easy to cheat when it's the real thing, huh?" "I don't understand." "Yeah, you do. You've been using a computer code against me." "What are you talking about, Kevin?" "I'm talking about the code. The one you use to clear zero tolerance. The one you've been using this last year to pretend you're deadly at computers. You might fool everyone else, but not me." "I've no clue what you're on about." "You know fine well you fucking cheat." "I don't know anything about a code. Whatever has you wound up is inside your own head." "Oh yeah? Well then explain SYS 4551 to me then." "What?" "You heard. SYS 4551. Don't pretend you know nothing about it. I saw it flash up on your screen before zero tolerance." "That's the loading code, you mad bastard." "Huh?" "The load code. Comes with the game." "Huh?" "The code to show you what version it is. How can you not know that?" No. Crewman T631 crouched into a shadow close to the wall and dropped to one knee. He silently measured the distance to his targets. It was not difficult. They were both standing in the middle of the corridor shouting loudly at each other. This moment was what all his training had been for. His mind, his body, and his weapon were now one thing. And that thing was a means of delivering pain and death. Crewman T631 began his firing sequence. Thrunk! 3.5 tons of automotive engineering, a games console, and 4 adult humans collided with the embodiment of Zardonian prowess. It was possible to repair the van with a new front grille and left side headlight, but nothing could be done for the Zardonian infantryman. "Watch where the fuck you're going, Sandra. You've got to run Kev and Jerry McLaughlin over." "What?" "Kev and Jerry, they're right in front of you." "I can't hear you. My ears are ringing." Stop, 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 stop! The van skidded to a halt before Jerry and Kevin. "Move over and let me do the driving. Fuck's sake. You need to watch for things in front of you when you're going forward, Sandra." The van was now sideways in the centre of a large access corridor. Just visible ahead was the entrance to the control room. It still bore the scars of Jerry and Paz's earlier visit, but this time the aliens were taking no chances. They had barricaded the door behind a line of steel shuttering. Sarna jumped out of the driver's side of the van and shut the door after her. Pat climbed into the driving seat. Jerry walked over to the van while Kelvin continued on his way along the corridor. Pat stuck his head out of the window. "Up in, Jerry. We were attacked in the landing bay. We all need to head." "Stop shouting. There's aliens about." "What? Can't hear you." "Keep your voice down." Jerry leaned in close to Pa and glanced towards Kevin. "Look, say nothing, but we might have a bit of bother getting that fella to leave. He wants to attack the control centre single-handed." "That sounds risky. Are you sure?" Jerry nodded grimly. Pa turned to Martina and gestured towards the passenger door. He pointed it behind him. "You better get out, so, and make sure Faf is out too." Martina and Faf joined Jerry and Sandra outside the van. Pa revved the engine.
Jerry stared blankly at the others and back to Pa. "What the fuck are you doing?" Pa flashed a solemn thumbs up. "No problem!" The van accelerated away. It was close to full speed by the time it passed Kevin. It then ploughed headlong into the control room. His computer's conclusion was useless. In order to know how to defeat humanity, it is necessary to defeat humanity. The Zardonian commander was fast running out of options. Then a spaceship landed into the control center. Its impact knocked out most of the ship's systems. This was followed by something familiar to humans, but alien to Zardonians. Chaos. He first ordered his crew to ignore the humans and focus on getting the systems working. Power up! The explosion was close. Close enough to target the control center. He then ordered his crew to respond with every weapon they had. Chapter 19. They've evolved to live in a universe where the things that matter for survival are neither too big nor too small. Who the fuck said that? You know, where everything either stands still or moves slowly compared to the speed of light, yeah? Billy, is that you? It had been an unknown amount of time since Pa sped past Kevin. The collision left a hole large enough to see into the control room, where the van was now buried in an array of panels. Aliens ran frantically past it. They had a bigger problem. Nobody can be anybody else. Kevin strained his eyes to see where the voice was coming from. It was not clear. The only light came from the control room ceiling, and the best it did was make shadows. Billy, if that's you, you better still have the weapons you stole off me. It was you that stole them. I was leaving them back, yeah? Fuck's sake, Billy. You're as much use as a handbrake in a canoe. Go get them and start firing back. What, mate? I don't hear any shooting. You will soon. Kevin's back was to the wall. He did his best to stay in the shadows as he inched towards the control room. Up! The explosion came from behind, but it was close. It caused panic among the aliens. They grabbed weapons and ran towards it. Kevin watched them stream by him until there was only one left. Come on, Billy. There's our chance. Go and check if Pa's okay. I'll sort the alien. The creature left in the room had menace in its stance. Its black scales blended in with the darkness, but two red eyes glowed hatred. Their focus was on Kevin, and Kevin's focus was on them. Can you see Pa, Billy? He's sparked out, mate. See if you can wake him. Kevin tried firing the weapon, but nothing happened. He then threw it at the alien, and missed. Gartach! The first blow landed behind Kevin's ear. It put him face down on the ground. He scrambled away and ducked the next one. Kevin tried to move and give himself space. He figured the alien's big head would make it clumsy. He was wrong. Can you get the van started, Billy? A head kick rocked Kevin and sent him backwards. The barrage of blows that followed narrowed his vision to a pinprick of light. One last slap meant he was on his back, wearing a crown of stars. Or so he thought. The stars were neither in his head or around it. They were outside the transparent dome of the control room, and he was looking up at it. Stand. Move. Do. Kevin struggled to his feet. I'm human, and I won't go gently into the night. The glowing red eyes once again focused on Kevin. But this time something changed. A small flicker of doubt. It was barely noticeable, but Kevin saw it. The Zardonian commander knew Kevin saw it. Kevin's attack was relentless. He hammered his way forward, raining kicks and blows as he moved. The Zardonian backed up, wobbled, and collapsed. Billy glanced between the crumpled alien and Kevin and slapped the dashboard of the van. Whoop whoop! Well, no, that was hardcore. Yeah! Go on, humans! Pa sat up at the sound of the roar. What? Where am I? What's happening? You're on a spaceship, mate. You drove a Ford Transit into the controls and your friends just outpunched an alien warlord. Kevin joined them at the van. He climbed in and turned the ignition. Nothing happened. Fuck! He turned the ignition for a second time. Nothing happened again. Shit! He tried a third time. Bram! The engine sputtered into life. Bleep! This vehicle has been irreparably damaged, croaked the Mega Drive. Keep your heads down, lads. We're going to go and rescue the 4 lads. 5 lads, Kev. Jerry McLaughlin is with them. Fuck him. He can find his own way back. Now, crewman T412 came from the outer galactic spiral, the last civilized star system to have been conquered. Of the 564 fighters that had surrounded the humans, only 9 could remember a universe before Zardonian rule. Of those 9, only 1 had lived on a free world. Of all the crew and humans on the ship that morning, he was the only one to understand defeat. Crewman T412 hoped the ship's communicator would also know of a word for defeat. He activated and surrendered. Jerry was struggling to see where he was. Put the guns down before you hurt someone! The collision had caused everything to go dark. Martina, Sandra and Faf were halfway along the corridor. The remaining light from the control room reflected on the weapons. Why? They might be useful, Jerry. How would they be useful? Have any of you fired an alien gun before? Where'd you get them anyway? Back there, it was 4 of them lying in a heap. The controls look simple enough. Turn up! The round shot up the corridor before detonating. Sorry lads, that was my fault. Just put the fucking things down! All of a sudden, shadows blocked the light. A noise followed. The sound of boulders in a shore break. It was heading towards them. But only Jerry seemed to hear it. Move! Huh? Move! Follow me! The noise was getting louder. Lads, you need to follow me. For fuck's sake, not back that way! Martina sparked a lighter. It briefly showed Sandra and Faf heading one direction and Jerry the other. Jerry lunged towards them and grabbed Faf by the shoulder. This way, away from the aliens. Not towards them. Martina, keep that thing lit. The group staggered around a corner and into a large room. Jerry motioned for everyone to move away from the door and be quiet. Martina quenched the lighter. It felt quiet outside, but every so often a shout and shuffle of feet let the group know something was there. The darkness, combined with the silence, made it hard to mark time. Martina, hand us that lighter for a minute, will you? Jerry sparked the lighter and peered into the corridor. Fuck! What'd you say? Loads of aliens. How many? I can't be sure. Loads. The room fell silent. This is all your fault, Jerry. You said you knew what to do. Now we're all going to die. Don't freak out, Martina. They're waiting for us to move. If we just sit tight and relax, we'll be fine. Relax? What the fuck do you mean relax? Any minute now they're going to smash in here and kill all of us. Nobody's going to die, Martina. Well, now you're talking pure shite. Everyone's going to die. Tell me one person that never died. Shane McGowan. Not including him. The room fell briefly silent again. Well, it's hard to know exactly. I have my suspicions about a few people. Nephilim are immortal. And every Archon is too. Though they like to give the appearance of aging. But don't be fooled. The sound, when it came, was exactly like the noise of a box of metal cutlery being kicked over a low wall. Except much, much louder. The single working headlight that followed it through the wall was blinding. Gronk! Get in, lads!
The back doors of the van were yanked open. "Hold on, not you, Jerry, we're a bit tight for space." Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta, rat-ta-ta-ta-ta. "You ready, lads? Take off in X-3. Rat-ta-ta-ta-ta, zing. X-2. Bleep. Guys in Shemason," declared the Mega Drive. Clump. The van was back on a hillside in Sligo. "Bleep. Guys in," fizzled the Mega Drive. The sun was high. An Opel Astra approached from the edge of the clearing. Faf, Jerry, Sandra and Martina poured out of the back of the van. "Bleep. Kaizen. Bleep. Jamazen. Bleep." "What's up with the Mega Drive?" "Same thing as the spaceship. The CPU went into recursion and gnawed itself back to source code." "What do you mean, Jerry?" "Oh, it's Ghost." "Fuck's sake, lads, is that McLaughlin? Who let him into the van?" "It's not your van to say who goes in or not, Kev. Is Billy with you?" "Yeah, Martina, he's here." "Has he still got my stereo?" "No, but if you want music, I can stick on the radio. Give me a second." There was a crackle of static, but no music. "Attention all humans. An ambition of an enemy is smashed by your prompt correspondence. Accordingly, enable to evade a crisis." "What the fuck was that?" "That's them aliens again. They mustn't just know when they're biting." The Opel Astra was now alongside the van. "Whoosh! Turn it off. Here's Tony and Paul." Tony was driving, and his open window was level with the cab of the van. "Lads, have you seen anyone wandering about up here? Someone went off with our space radio." "No, we saw nobody. And we don't know anything about your stereo." "Yeah, we do." "Shut the fuck up, Fav." Tony and Paul eyed the group suspiciously for several seconds. Tony started the car again and began reversing. He paused and looked back into the driver's window of the van. "By the way, well done, Kevin. Looks like you saved the world." "Don't heed them, Kev. You can never trust a word from those creatures' mouths." The rest of Thursday turned out dry, although some patchy drizzle was due in from the Atlantic. The van rattled its way out along the Boreen. Far above, a flash bloomed and disappeared. Something became nothing. And that was it for the afternoon of the 4th of July 1996. A van, a hero, an MC/poet, 5 friends, and the broken remains of the world's first superluminal hyperdrive. Kaizen Shemazen. Every Zardonian knows the words, but no Zardonian can say what they mean. The 2-word automated message became the last transmission from a missing flagship. They have been carved into a monument outside Zardonian Space Fleet headquarters to preserve the enigma. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, surely Zardonians know where Earth is. Won't they just build an even better flagship and set out to get revenge? Well, you know, that's where you come in.